Welcome to Anime Audiobook channel. Naruto, Drop System. Chapter 11, The Uchiha Clan Massacre. Time flew by, and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 months, Yagyu continued his usual routine, creating 2 shadow clones every day to train at home. His main body attended the Ninja Academy, always hoping for a stroke of luck, that he might drop something from Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha, or even Shikamaru Nara. During the holidays, Yagyu trained with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura. However, instead of going to secluded areas like the woods or other remote places, they began training at Yagyu's home. When the 3 girls first saw Yagyu's shadow clones, they were shocked, their eyes lighting up as they stared at him with admiration. They had already thought that Yagyu was impressive for mastering techniques that only genin were supposed to know in his first year. Even Ino and Sakura's parents had praised him, agreeing to let their daughters train with him during the holidays. However, they hadn't expected Yagyu to also know the Shadow Clone Jutsu, a B-rank technique. Aside from Hinata, Ino and Sakura couldn't even perform the 3 basic jutsu yet. After discovering Yagyu's true capabilities, Hinata, Ino, and Sakura were even more motivated to train. Just as Ino didn't want to be surpassed by Hinata or Sakura, the 3 girls didn't want to fall too far behind Yagyu, fearing he might leave them behind one day. Thus, during every break, Yagyu's house became their temporary training ground. Why only temporary? Because Yagyu wasn't training outdoors during this time. To be precise, he had decided not to train outside or take Hinata, Ino, or Sakura out until after the Uchiha clan was annihilated. He knew that Uchiha Obito would be wandering around Konoha during this period. With his Kamui ability to phase through matter, Obito was the biggest bug in the entire ninja world. He might not be able to beat you, but you definitely couldn't beat him. Even if you somehow managed to kill him once, he had Izanagi as a respawn token. Unless you had an exceptionally well-hidden separate dimension, there was nowhere in the ninja world safe from him. Yagyu didn't want to risk training outside and accidentally catching Obito's attention. Better safe than sorry. Yagyu wasn't ready to be noticed by the major players just yet. Finally, the fateful day arrived. During the last class of the afternoon, Irika suddenly announced, "There will be a surprise test today. Meet at the training grounds after class." Ah, seriously? The classroom was immediately filled with groans, mainly from the weaker students. On the other hand, top students like Sasuke Uchiha were excited. After all, surprise tests counted towards their academic credits. The reason Yagyu had become the top student was that, besides getting full marks in the final exams, he also excelled in pop quizzes and surprise tests throughout the year. To dethrone him as the top student, Sasuke knew he would have to match Yagyu's scores in these tests. Even better, if he could prevent Yagyu from achieving full marks, he might be able to claim the title for himself. This was exactly how Sasuke had been overtaken last time. For Sasuke, these quizzes and surprise tests were a chance for redemption. With this in mind, Sasuke shot a challenging glance at Yagyu. By sheer coincidence, Yagyu was also looking at Sasuke, except his gaze was one of pity. If you were to ask who the most tragic character in the Naruto world was, Sasuke Uchiha would undoubtedly be one of them. Before the age of 7, Sasuke had everything. He was the chosen one, born into one of the greatest clans in the ninja world, with a father who was the clan leader, a genius brother, and himself the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths son. But after the age of 7, Sasuke no longer lived for himself. He became consumed by a quest for vengeance, willing to sacrifice everything to kill his brother, Itachi Uchiha. And when he finally succeeded in killing Itachi and learned the truth about his clan's massacre, his desire for revenge and revolution was ultimately quashed by Naruto. In the end, Sasuke was left wandering the world, trying to atone for his sins. Naruto and Sasuke, the reincarnations of the sage's sons, were polar opposites, just like the yin and yang powers within them. One suffered early in life, while the other suffered later. No wonder their bond transcended mere friendship. If one of them had been female, they would have made an unstoppable couple. Though Yagyu knew Sasuke was about to experience tragedy and become the infamous Cursed Avenger, he had no intention of warning him. This was a major event orchestrated by the higher UPS in Konoha, far beyond the influence of someone like Yagyu. When the school bell rang, students hurried out of the academy, but the second-year Class 1 students headed to the training grounds for the surprise test. By the time the survival exercise ended, the sky had already darkened, and dusk had turned to night. For the first time, the students were dismissed so late, and instead of staying out to play, they hurried home. Sasuke did the same, rushing back as fast as he could. Watching his retreating figure, Yagyu knew that this lively, proud Sasuke Uchiha would soon be gone. The next time he would see Sasuke, he would be a brooding, honor-driven survivor of the Uchiha clan. After the Uzumaki and Senju clans, yet another ancient clan was about to be wiped out. Soon enough, the Sharingan would become a legendary bloodline. Yagyu sighed inwardly at the thought. After returning home, Yagyu had dinner, bathed, and went to bed early. The next morning, as soon as Yagyu stepped outside, he noticed something different in the village's atmosphere. All along the way, he saw villagers whispering to each other. As he passed, he frequently heard the word Uchiha. The news of the Uchiha clan massacre had already spread. It wouldn't be long before the entire Land of Fire and the rest of the ninja world heard about it. When Yagyu arrived at school, Sasuke's seat remained empty, even after the bell rang. "Iruka-sensei, is Sasuke all right?" Some of the girls, who were clearly aware of the massacre, asked anxiously when Iruka entered the classroom. Clearly, those who liked or had a crush on Sasuke feared that he might have perished as well. Iruka reassured them, "Don't worry, Sasuke is fine. He's just unconscious and in the hospital. Once he wakes up, I'll go visit him." Hearing that Sasuke was safe, the girls breathed a sigh of relief, already planning to inform the support group during the next break. Little did they know just how deeply this incident would affect Sasuke. In fact, the colder and more distant Sasuke would eventually become even more popular among them. "I heard it was Sasuke's brother who wiped out the Uchiha clan," one girl whispered. "Really, poor Sasuke?" Another replied. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata were also discussing the event. Meanwhile, Yagyu rested his chin on his hand, silently breathing a sigh of relief. The Uchiha clan was gone, which meant that Obito and Black Zetsu wouldn't be lurking around Konoha anymore. It was finally safe for him to resume outdoor training. Chapter 12, Konoha Year 59, Yagyu gains attention. When Sasuke Uchiha finally returned to school, 5 days had passed. Just as Yagyu expected, the Sasuke who returned had an aura of coldness around him. The darkness had already begun to take root. However, Sasuke's fan club didn't notice this. In fact, they thought this new, colder Sasuke was even cooler. The girls in Class 1 felt they were incredibly fortunate, having both the warm and gentle Yagyu and the cold and aloof Sasuke. They didn't know which one to choose. Watching Sasuke, who now exuded an intimidating presence and made his seatmate shrink away in fear, Yagyu fell into deep thought. Though Sasuke couldn't activate it at will yet, he had already awakened the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. So, could this increase the chances of dropping the Sharingan or Indra's Chakra from him? As Yagyu pondered this, Suzuki seemed to sense his gaze and suddenly turned to look at him. What a terrifying look! What's wrong with Suzuki? Ino and Sakura were both startled by Sasuke's piercing gaze. Yagyu, however, didn't flinch and calmly met Sasuke's stare. After a few seconds, Suzuki finally looked away. Yagyu knew that he had now become Sasuke's target. As the last remaining member of the Uchiha clan, Suzuki would take immense pride in his family's honor. He wouldn't allow anyone to belittle or look down on the Uchiha clan. Even more, Suzuki couldn't accept being overshadowed by someone else while he carried the Uchiha name. From now on, Suzuki would train and study with all his might, doing everything he could to claim the title of top student. This was exactly what Yagyu wanted. If it weren't for the need to keep a low profile around Naruto and Suzuki, Yagyu would have sparred with them every day by now. After all, these two reincarnations of the sage's sons were the greatest treasures of this era. If Yagyu could fully tap into these two gold mines, his ceiling would be nothing less than achieving the power of the Sage of Six Paths. Time passed like a fleeting horse, and soon it was March of Konoha year 59. Almost 4 years had passed since the Uchiha clan's massacre. The news of the Uchiha clan, one of Konoha and the ninja world's 3 greatest clans, being wiped out had shocked the ninja world at the time. Of course, since Yagyu couldn't leave the village, he didn't know the full extent of the uproar. But with the Uchiha clan's demise, Konoha's strength, already waning, took another major hit. Yet strangely, none of the village's enemies took advantage of the situation, and the balance between the 5 great ninja villages remained intact. This was good news. If war had broken out, Yagyu's generation would undoubtedly have been sent to the battlefield early. If Yagyu hadn't awakened his game system, it wouldn't have mattered whether war broke out or not, as kids his age wouldn't be sent to the front lines anyway. But knowing his own potential and the strength he could one day achieve, Yagyu didn't want a war to break out, not yet. He wasn't strong enough to fight on the front lines, and there was always the risk that an enemy might send a powerful ninja to wipe out Konoha's new generation in secret. Getting eliminated before he had a chance to fully develop would be even more frustrating than mastering a powerful technique and getting taken out by a random shoe falling from the sky. The fact that the 5 great ninja villages chose to maintain the current balance was the best news for Yagyu. As Yagyu had expected, over the past 4 years, Suzuki had been constantly competing with him, trying to take the top student title away. For every pop quiz or surprise test, especially in taijutsu duels, Suzuki would actively request Iruka to make Yagyu his opponent. There was even an incident where Naruto provoked Suzuki, only to be instantly defeated by him. Seeing Suzuki behave as if he would pummel any other classmate if not allowed to fight Yagyu, Iruka had a hard time managing him. In the end, Iruka sought Yagyu's opinion, and Yagyu agreed readily. He had been wondering when he would get matched up with Suzuki again. So for nearly 4 years, in every test that involved taijutsu or, starting from the 3rd year, Kunao combat, Suzuki had always been Yagyu's opponent. And every time, Suzuki had lost. No matter how hard Suzuki worked, Yagyu always worked harder. Yagyu, who had mastered the Shadow Clone Jutsu in his first year, was constantly training, growing stronger every day. He had long surpassed the level required to graduate early. If not for the hope of getting lucky and dropping some valuable items over the 6 years, Yagyu would have already started sending a shadow clone to attend class, just like Itaki Uchiha had done. Without the ability to activate his Sharingan, Suzuki simply couldn't match Yagyu in any of the foundational skills of a ninja. As a result, the title of top student remained firmly in Yagyu's grasp every year. Being the top student year after year, outshining even the heirs of the great ninja clans, Yagyu's reputation had spread not only throughout the ninja academy but also caught the attention of several prominent figures. In particular, Yamanaka Inoichi and Hyaga Hayashi had begun to take a close interest in the boy who had won over their daughters. They had even secretly observed Yagyu's training sessions with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura. Seeing Yagyu teach the girls techniques typically reserved for genin, which they were able to master, both Inoichi and Hayashi were impressed. They no longer objected to their daughters spending time with him. Even the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had taken notice of Yagyu. With the example of the fourth Hokage fresh in his mind, Hiruzen placed great importance on the talents of civilian ninjas. Bloodline limits weren't everything. What mattered most was innate talent. Among the four Hokage, only the first Hokage possessed a bloodline limit. The fact that Yagyu was consistently able to outperform the heirs of the great ninja clans and hold on to the title of top student proved that his talent and potential were exceptional. If guided and nurtured, Yagyu could very well become a pillar of Konoha's future. As for Yagyu, he had no idea that his low-profile self had attracted so much attention from important figures. If he knew that he had already caught the eye of the Hokage, Yagyu would have breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't mind being noticed by Hiruzen Sarutobi. What worried him was being noticed by Danzo Shimura. Thankfully, his parents had both been Chunin of Konoha, firmly loyal to the Hokage faction. Since he was considered rooted in the right lineage, even Danzo wouldn't dare to abduct Yagyu for brainwashing without consequences. In such a small village, the political scheming was endless. There was no helping it. Hiruzen Sarutobi was living proof of the saying, prosperity doesn't last beyond 3 generations. Once, Konoha had been incredibly strong. The number of cage-level ninjas couldn't be counted on one hand. But many of these powerful individuals had either been manipulated by Hiruzen and Danzo or had been driven away. Now that Hiruzen was the only one left holding the village together, he had finally realized the gravity of the situation. Chapter 13, The Final Big Exam, Master of Nurturing. On March 18, the annual final exam day arrived. This was also the last big exam for Yagyu and his classmates. In April, they would advance to the 6th grade, and by March next year, the final exam would be their graduation assessment. As usual, Yagyu woke up early that day. He began with his morning training in the courtyard, then showered and ate breakfast. After drinking a full glass of fresh milk, he headed straight for the Ninja Academy. Yagyu, good morning. While walking to school, a familiar girl's voice called out from behind him. Immediately, Yagyu felt a weight on his back, causing him to lean forward slightly. A blonde girl had sneak attacked him from behind, jumping onto his back. Good morning, Ino, Yagyu replied with a smile. He skillfully unhooked her arms from around his neck, placing her down before they continued walking side by side. As they walked, the sight of this handsome boy and beautiful girl together attracted many glances. Over the past 4 years, now at 11 years old, both Yagyu and Ino had undergone significant changes. Starting with height, Yagyu had initially been the same height as Sasuke Uchiha and the others. However, after merging with Asura's chakra, Yagyu's growth had accelerated as if it had been boosted. Unlike Naruto, who suffered from malnutrition, Yagyu had inherited his parents' wealth, as well as annual pensions, ensuring he grew up healthy. Just like Naruto's growth spurt when he trained with Jiraiya and got proper nutrition, Yagyu went from being short to becoming one of the tallest in his class. Currently, Yagyu stood at 1.63 meters tall. While this height might not be impressive in Yagyu's previous world, or in a village like Kumagakure that emphasized physical training, in Konoha, he stood out. After all, even Sasuke Uchiha was just over 1.5 meters tall when he graduated. Yagyu was certain he would continue growing and could reach over 1.65 meters, maybe even surpass 1.70 meters by next year. By then, finding someone above 1.55 meters among the new generation would be difficult. Standing at 1.63 meters, Yagyu's features had matured quickly. His sharp and defined facial features, combined with his silver hair that lightly covered his ears and his gem-like red eyes, made him incredibly handsome. Paired with his mature demeanor, his gaze was deep and captivating, often making the hearts of young girls flutter with admiration. As they walked, countless young girls who had just started to awaken to romantic feelings shot envious looks at Ino, who walked beside Yagyu. They wished they could switch places with her. Over the years, Ino had changed dramatically as well. She had also shed her childishness, now standing at around 1.45 meters. Her golden hair often changed styles. Sometimes she wore it in the signature high ponytail from the original story, other times it was long and straight, and sometimes she even wore it in twin tails. This was all because Yagyu had once commented that Ino's aura would change depending on her hairstyle. Since then, Ino had become skilled at managing her hair, effortlessly switching between straight, high ponytail, twin tails, or even braided styles. "Good morning, Yagyu. Yagyu-kun, good luck with the exam." As they arrived at the Ninja Academy, many classmates greeted Yagyu. Some were from his class, others from different classes. Unlike the cold and aloof Suzuki Uchiha or Niji Hyuga, Yagyu was extremely popular at the academy. Had his hair been blonde, he might have even inherited Minato Namikaze's little son nickname. Yagyu didn't ignore their enthusiasm. He responded with his usual patience and warm demeanor. This was all part of his persona. In the past, it was about making a good impression on the heirs of the great ninja clans. Now, it was all for Hiruzen Sarutobi to see. By outperforming the heirs of the major ninja clans and having a personality like Minato's, Hiruzen wouldn't just take him seriously but wouldn't let Danzo Shimura take him away either. This mask was Yagyu's way of protecting himself. Upon arriving in the classroom, Yagyu noticed that Sakura and Hinata had already arrived. Seeing Ino walk in with Yagyu, Sakura teasingly whispered to her, "No wonder when I went to your house, your mom said you had already left. But when I got to school, you weren't here. Looks like you went to wait for Yagyu again, hey." "Cough, it's just a coincidence, just a coincidence," Ino replied, lightly coughing to cover her embarrassment. Sakura merely rolled her eyes in response. "Good morning, Yagyu-kun," Hinata greeted, still using honorifics when addressing him. "Good morning, Hinata," Yagyu smiled and waved back. Just like Ino, both Hinata and Sakura had also undergone significant changes over the years. The most dramatic transformation was in Hinata. Unlike her short hair in the original story, Hinata had secretly grown her hair long after learning that Yagyu preferred long hair. Now, with her long, straight hair, black mesh shirt, and white jacket, Hinata looked like a smaller version of her appearance in the Shippuden arc of the original series. Even more impressive, Hinata had already surpassed her original Shippuden height of 1.5 meters, currently standing at 1.52 meters. Among the three girls, Hinata was now the tallest. This change was undoubtedly brought about by Yagyu. He had long known about Hinata's big eater trait, a characteristic that often correlated with strong ninja potential. Being able to eat a lot was seen as a blessing, a trait necessary for a strong ninja. During outdoor training, Yagyu often took Hinata, Ino, and Sakura hunting, cooking barbecue for them afterward. He purposefully pointed out Hinata's hidden trait during these meals. When Yagyu mentioned Hinata's big eater ability, she was so embarrassed that she almost fainted on the spot. However, after Yagyu praised her talent, the worry she had carried about eating too much in front of Yagyu and Ino vanished. Afterward, Yagyu helped her feel more comfortable with her appetite. The mental energy from her Byakugan and the physical energy from her hearty eating had not only caused Hinata to grow taller than expected, but it had also given her an immense amount of chakra. If Hinata wasn't still shy and reserved, she would have been a formidable rival to Suzuki, who only saw Yagyu as his competition. As for Sakura, she still sported her signature pink straight hair, wearing a red cheongsam top paired with various colored pants, looking similar to her appearance in the original series. But internally, she had also changed significantly. Having been rescued by Yagyu, Sakura had not developed her second, more aggressive personality. Instead, she remained ladylike, already showing hints of the refined demeanor of her older self in Boruto. Her exceptional chakra control talent had also been fully nurtured with Yagyu's help. If she still graduated with Naruto and Suzuki next year, Yagyu was certain her skills would greatly surprise them. Knowing that all of these changes in the girls were due to his influence filled Yagyu with a strong sense of accomplishment. If he had been born in the world of Pokémon, Yagyu believed he would have been a master at nurturing and training. Chapter 14, Rule-Free Battle, Unleashing Full Power. The exam started quickly, with the morning focused on cultural studies. For Yagyu, these questions posed no difficulty. Once the morning exam ended, Yagyu and the others hurried home to eat lunch, as there was no time for an afternoon nap. They had to return to the Ninja Academy for the next round of tests. The 5th grade exam had the most sections, while the 6th grade graduation exam would only involve one. The afternoon exam consisted of shuriken throwing, taijutsu duels, survival exercises, kunao close combat, and rule-free combat. Kunao close combat was easy to understand. It involved fighting with a kunao, either subduing or killing your opponent to claim victory. This was a basic skill taught from the 3rd grade onwards, as ninjas were tools of assassination. How could they function if they couldn't kill? Rule-free combat was a section introduced in the 5th grade. It was simple to grasp. You could use any means to defeat or kill your opponent. The exam started quickly, with the first round being shuriken throwing. Unlike the written exam that required grading, the afternoon sessions were graded on the spot. As expected, Yagyu scored full marks. In the taijutsu duels, Yagyu's opponent wasn't Suzuki Uchiha. Starting from the 4th grade, these exams were no longer child's play. While Irika could still choose the opponents for small quizzes and impromptu tests, the final exam required fairness and impartiality. Standing beside Irika in the exam arena was a Chunin, not Mizuki from the original story, but a female teacher skilled in medical ninjutsu. In the 3rd grade, the rules for taijutsu duels changed. It was no longer a matter of who fell first, but instead, you had to subdue your opponent or make them give up. Injuries were unavoidable during these duels. As the taijutsu exam began, Yagyu and the others drew lots to determine their opponents. Yagyu drew a female classmate as his opponent. She didn't give up, as surrendering meant 0 points. Yagyu didn't defeat her instantly but allowed several moves before defeating her in a gentlemanly manner. Interestingly, Sasuke's opponent was Naruto once again. For some reason, whenever opponents were chosen by lot, Suzuki often ended up fighting Naruto. This made Yagyu wonder if the fate of these two brothers somehow influenced the world's rules. In their taijutsu duel, Suzuki won, as expected. At this point, Naruto was still the dead last student, scoring low in all subjects and frequently leaving his written exams blank. If graduation depended on cumulative scores, Naruto would never graduate in his lifetime. Next came the kunao close combat, also determined by drawing lots. The atmosphere was completely different from the taijutsu duel. Irika and the medical teacher's serious expressions made it clear how intense this round was. After Irika blew the whistle, he only retreated a few steps, his eyes locked on the combatants, ready to intervene the moment something went wrong. Yagyu's opponent this time was a male classmate who often greeted him. "Thank you for the match." Just like with the female classmate earlier, Yagyu easily blocked his opponent's strikes with his kunao. Then, in an instant, he used the body flicker technique to disappear and reappeared behind his opponent, pressing the kunao against the back of his neck to end the match. "No wonder you're Yagyu, I didn't stand a chance." The nearly instantaneously defeated boy shook hands with Yagyu in the traditional reconciliation gesture, showing no sign of discouragement. Losing to Yagyu was something most of the class had grown accustomed to over the years, except for Sasuke and Naruto, who took their losses much harder. By now, Yagyu was seen as the unbeatable final boss in their eyes. Facing him in the kunao close combat exam was almost a good thing. It meant they didn't have to endure the pain of a prolonged battle. In the following matches, many students had their clothes or even skin slashed by kunao. If anyone appeared to be in life-threatening danger, Irika would instantly step in and stop the match, declaring the student who was about to be killed as the loser. If kunao close combat hadn't been introduced in the 3rd grade, many students might have ended up crying from the pain. Yagyu still remembered that during the first kunao combat sessions, many classmates had been too scared to move, trembling as they held their kunao in place. After the kunao close combat round ended, the next exam didn't begin immediately. The injured students were treated first. Several students ended up with their bodies or faces wrapped in white bandages or covered in adhesive bandages. Some students had lighter injuries that healed almost instantly. Soon after, the next round of tests began. This time, it wasn't a survival exercise but rule-free combat. Yagyu and the others lined up to receive their equipment. This included ninja pouches filled with shuriken and kunao, along with gloves embedded with metal plates. After putting on their gloves and securing their ninja pouches, Yagyu and the others drew lots again. Once everyone had drawn their numbers, Irika and the medical teacher organized the matches. When Yagyu saw his opponent, he couldn't help but pause slightly. Sasuke Uchiha, standing across from him, also froze for a moment before his face lit up with joy. That's right, Yagyu's opponent was Sasuke Uchiha. Finally, they were matched. Yagyu's excitement mirrored Sasuke's. Over the past few years, Yagyu had only fought Sasuke during small quizzes and impromptu tests. But starting from the 3rd grade final exams, they hadn't faced each other at all. And despite all of Yagyu's victories over Sasuke in those years, he hadn't managed to get anything special from him. Now, at last, they were matched up again and in a rule-free duel no less. This would be the most valuable match of all. Not only were Yagyu and Sasuke eager, but so were all their classmates, as well as Irika and the medical teacher. Everyone wanted to see who would emerge victorious between the fully powered Yagyu and Sasuke. As match after match concluded, the much-anticipated showdown finally arrived. This time, you're definitely going to lose. Standing on the open field, Sasuke faced Yagyu with confidence. Despite never having won against Yagyu, his face radiated arrogance as he declared, "I'm going to show you just how big the gap between us really is. I'm looking forward to it." "Don't let me down," Yagyu replied, smiling as he raised his index and middle fingers to form the confrontation seal. Sasuke did the same, excitement evident in his voice. "You won't be disappointed." Rule-free combat, 7th group, Yagyu vs Sasuke Uchiha. Begin. Seeing both of them form the confrontation seal, Irika wasted no time and blew the whistle. Tweet. Chapter 15, The Red Light Orb, Bloodline Limit. Tweet. As the whistle blew, both Yagyu and Suzuki Uchiha moved simultaneously, their hands diving into their ninja pouches. Each clasped 3 shuriken between their fingers and hurled them at each other. The 6 shuriken clashed in mid-air, sparks flying briefly. Whoosh! Before the shuriken hit the ground, Yagyu and Sasuke's bodies blurred and disappeared, leaving only afterimages behind. The 2 shadows collided at speeds almost impossible to track with the naked eye. Appearing right in front of each other, Yagyu and Suzuki gripped their kunao in reverse, slashing and stabbing at each other with lightning speed. The strikes were incredibly fast, but each one was either blocked by the other's kunao or deflected by the iron plates on their gloves. As they grappled, both Yagyu and Suzuki occasionally kicked at each other, exploiting any opening they found. Whenever one of them found a weak spot, both utilized the body flicker technique or the substitution jutsu from the 3 basic jutsu to avoid the attack. Their battle dazzled the onlookers, showcasing the massive gap between themselves and the rest of the class. Their attack speed, movement, combat experience, and battle intelligence were on a completely different level. Even Irika and the female teacher, who both feared Yagyu and Suzuki would sustain serious injuries, were amazed by their skill. It was undeniable purely on fundamentals. Both Yagyu and Suzuki had already mastered the skills needed to graduate from the Ninja Academy. When Irika and the other teachers were their age, they weren't even close to being on the same level as these 2 prodigies. However, in the next moment, both Irika and the female teacher's expressions shifted to shock. The students watching were also stunned. After another clash, Suzuki, who had yet to land a significant hit on Yagyu, suddenly leapt back, putting distance between them. In mid-air, a confident smirk appeared on his face as he formed the seal of the serpent and shouted, "You've lost! Fire style, fireball jutsu!" His hands formed seals at lightning speed, and Sasuke's cheeks puffed out before a small flame emerged from his mouth. The flame quickly grew into a massive fireball, hurtling toward Yagyu. The orange-red glow of the flames reflected on everyone's faces. At that moment, every student felt the intense heat radiating from the jutsu. Not good. Irika's face filled with concern as he prepared to step in and save Yagyu. But before he could act, his face shifted to one of disbelief. Yagyu also formed hand seals, his movements even faster than Sasuke's, and calmly said, "Water style, water wall." A stream of water shot from Yagyu's mouth, quickly forming a towering wall of water. It resembled a massive hand made of water, slapping down on the incoming fireball. Hiss! The sound of boiling water echoed, and thick steam engulfed Yagyu and Suzuki. The dense white mist created by the steam lingered for several seconds before finally dissipating. When the mist cleared, Yagyu and Suzuki were once again visible to everyone. Their reappearance marked the end of the rule-free duel. Suzuki stood frozen in place, his expression filled with disbelief. Yagyu, on the other hand, was standing behind him, holding a kunao to Sasuke's neck. Tweet. The whistle blew. The first to recover from shock, Irika, immediately announced the result: the match is over. The winner is Yagyu. He's amazing. And ninjutsu. Suzuki and Yagyu both used ninjutsu. Is this their true power? They can already use ninjutsu. Yagyu and Suzuki could graduate early at this rate. Irika's voice brought everyone back to reality. Instantly, the training ground buzzed with astonished chatter. Exclamations and discussions filled the air from all sides. Meanwhile, Yagyu and Suzuki still stood in place. Suzuki hadn't recovered from the shock. He couldn't believe that even after using his fire-style jutsu, he still lost to Yagyu. And how did Yagyu manage to move behind him in the mist? Could it be that Yagyu also knew some sensory technique? In contrast, Yagyu's attention was drawn to a bright red light suddenly radiating from Sasuke's body. The light flickered briefly before a red orb shot out from Sasuke's form, hovering in the air before drifting down to Yagyu's feet, transforming into a floating red light orb. Once the red orb was automatically absorbed into his body, Yagyu snapped back to the present. "Thank you for the match," Yagyu said, extending his index and middle fingers toward Sasuke. Sasuke finally came to his senses at Yagyu's words. His gaze was filled with complex emotions as he looked at Yagyu before reluctantly extending his own fingers. After performing the reconciliation seal, Sasuke turned and walked away without a word. In the past, after every loss, Sasuke would show clear frustration and swear to defeat Yagyu next time. But now, Sasuke said nothing. It was evident that losing this no-holds-barred, full-powered match against Yagyu had dealt a severe blow to Sasuke's pride. Until Sasuke mastered a new ninjutsu or could activate his Sharingan at will, it was unlikely he would regain the arrogance and confidence he once had in front of Yagyu. Returning to the group, Yagyu half-heartedly responded to his classmates' excited questions, his focus elsewhere. In reality, his mind was on the virtual interface only he could see, specifically on the red orb in his inventory. A new level of rarity had appeared. Over the past few years, Yagyu had occasionally obtained other items, but they were always from white orbs. These orbs contained relatively ordinary things. The most valuable item he had gotten was the sensory technique from Sakura. This sensory technique had been Sakura's most significant growth over the past few years. It was how Yagyu had located Sasuke in the thick mist and moved behind him to claim victory. White orbs contained basic skills and techniques, things that could be learned later through training. Blue orbs, however, held innate abilities or talents that could be enhanced through effort or external forces. Gold orbs were legendary, containing world-altering powers. These were the definitions Yagyu had assigned to the various orb colors. And now, a new color and tier had appeared. Was it ranked above blue or below it? It couldn't possibly be above gold, as Sasuke's greatest treasure would be the chakra of Indra, the son of the Sage of Six Paths on par with Naruto's legacy. Curious, Yagyu checked the information on the red orb. When the details popped up, Yagyu's heart surged with joy, and he barely managed to keep his expression under control. The red orb's description read, Bloodline Limit, Sharingan Red. Chapter 16, Buying Colored Contacts, Cage Level Potential. Bloodline Limit, Sharingan. Seeing these words, Yagyu felt like he had just taken a sip of cold soda on a scorching summer day. His entire body tingled with a refreshing chill, sending goosebumps across his skin. Not even when his game system had first awakened and granted him Asura's chakra did Yagyu feel this way. Back then, Yagyu had only felt excitement and fear, uncertain whether the Asura chakra he'd obtained had any hidden traps left by the Sage of Six Paths. But now that everything was clear, the sight of Bloodline Limit, Sharingan filled Yagyu with pure joy. Everyone knows that the world of Naruto could also be called the tale of the eye powers and the five villages conflicts. Rather than calling it a world dominated by bloodlines, it's more accurate to say it's dominated by ocular jutsu. The evolution of the Sharingan is the best representation of a ninja's power level. A single tomo represents a genin, 2 tomo a chunin, 3 tomo a jonin. Mangekyo Sharingan indicates cage level, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan indicates beyond cage level, and the Rinnegan represents a sage level power. Mastering each stage of the Sharingan makes the wielder a top-tier ninja for that rank. The best examples are Itaki Uchiha and Madara Uchiha. They both developed their Mangekyo and Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to the highest possible level, making them the very definition of overpowered at their respective tiers. Moreover, the Sharingan and Rinnegan provide numerous abilities, making them extremely powerful in combat. Yagyu had always hoped to obtain the same level of Indra's chakra from Suzuki Uchiha that matched Ajura's chakra. That would give him the potential to reach sage-level strength. Unfortunately, that hadn't happened. But now that he had obtained the bloodline limit, Sharingan, Yagyu felt more than satisfied. If he could evolve the Sharingan to the Mangekyo level, it would naturally become the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, meaning he would never suffer from blindness. Since Yagyu possessed Ajura's chakra, which gave him the Sage of Six Paths body, his ocular power consumption would be minimal, and his recovery would be far faster than even Obito Uchiha, who had Hashirama's cells implanted in him. Even if Yagyu were never able to extract Indra's chakra from Suzuki, he could follow Madara's path, implant Sasuke's cells into his body, and after decades, he might awaken the Rinnegan. Thinking this through made Yagyu eager to immediately fuse the bloodline limit, Sharingan. But a sliver of reason stopped him, and he found himself impatiently wanting to finish the exam as soon as possible. Half an hour later, the no-rules battles finally ended. The female teacher continued treating the injured students, while Irika listed the results of Yagyu and the others. Winners received full marks, while losers were scored based on their performance, receiving either low or high scores. Once the injured students had recovered, Yagyu and the others faced the final exam, the survival exercise. Just like in the first year, the survival exercise for 5th graders was essentially a game of hide and seek. However, unlike first-year students who only knew the basic cloak of invisibility technique, 5th-year students had learned all the fundamentals. If they were skilled enough, they could use the body replacement jutsu and body flicker technique to avoid being found by Irika. As long as they weren't caught within the time limit, they would receive full marks. Moreover, unlike the first year, where Irika would go easy on the students, he now took finding them seriously. That said, as long as the students' hiding methods weren't too clumsy, Irika would still show some leniency. Naturally, Yagyu earned full marks in this round as well. By the time the survival exercise ended and the scores were posted, the sun had already set, leaving only traces of twilight in the sky. After parting ways with Ino and the others and agreeing to train together the next day, Yagyu didn't head home right away. Instead, he visited a shop to buy a pair of colored contact lenses. Yes, colored contacts exist in this world. In the original story, when Kakashi removed his mask, the camera operator used colored contacts to disguise his appearance. For years, Yagyu had wanted to extract both Hinata's Byakugan and Sasuke's Sharingan. However, these two ocular jutsus are among the most famous dojutsu in the world. Their renown, even greater than the Rinnegan, made them household names. If Yagyu actually revealed that he had the Byakugan or Sharingan, it would be impossible to hide it in the Leaf Village. After all, he was just an orphaned commoner. If his powers were exposed, unless the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, personally protected him, Danzo would undoubtedly come knocking at his door. Even if Danzo didn't, Hayashi Hayaga surely would. But Yagyu couldn't stand the thought of possessing these powerful dojutsu and not using them, so from a young age, Yagyu had already been considering ways to avoid exposure. He came up with two solutions. One was to always wear sunglasses. While this behavior might seem odd, it wouldn't be considered too strange. Aside from the Aberame clan, there were plenty of other people in the village who wore sunglasses, such as Konohamaru's teacher, Ebisu, a special jonin of the leaf. However, after shopping around the village and discovering that colored contact lenses were available, Yagyu abandoned the sunglasses idea. Compared to colored contacts, sunglasses weren't as reliable. If, during a fight, someone shattered the sunglasses, Yagyu would either have to eliminate every witness or find a way to hide his dojutsu powers. Plus, sunglasses would obscure his good looks, and seeing things in constant darkness without using his dojutsu would be too inconvenient. So, Yagyu opted for colored contacts. When Yagyu returned home, he eagerly headed straight to the bathroom, stood before the mirror, and summoned his virtual interface to fuse the bloodline limit, Sharingan. The red light orb emerged from the inventory, dissolving into a beam of light that penetrated Yagyu's body. And then, nothing. Just like when he fused with Asura's chakra, Yagyu's body experienced no immediate changes. In fact, this time, it felt even less dramatic than when he fused with Asura's chakra. After absorbing Asura's chakra, Yagyu's chakra flow had at least improved from a mere trickle to the steady stream of a faucet. But after fusing the bloodline limit, Sharingan, Yagyu's appearance and internal energy didn't change at all. The anticipated black tomo markings didn't appear in his already beautiful red eyes. Yagyu stood dumbfounded for a moment before realizing why. Bloodline limit, Sharingan. From the description, Yagyu understood that what he had acquired wasn't Sasuke Uchiha's Sharingan but rather the Uchiha clan's bloodline limit. Bloodline limits, such as the Sharingan, require a conscious awakening before they can be used. Understanding this, Yagyu quickly summoned his virtual interface. In the section for bloodline limits, it no longer showed a blank field. Instead, 3 new words appeared: bloodline limit, Sharingan. That's right, just the Sharingan. The sage's body didn't count as a bloodline limit. The fact that his Sharingan required awakening was excellent news for Yagyu. It meant that when his Sharingan evolved to the Mangekyo level, its abilities wouldn't be identical to Sasuke's but would instead develop unique jutsu of his own. The thought filled Yagyu with eager anticipation for the future. The stamina provided by the sage's body and the combat power of the Sharingan. Yagyu's potential had already reached beyond cage-level heights. Chapter 17, The Year Konoha 60, Shikamaru's Bold Guess. Time flows like water, the years pass swiftly. Another winter has given way to spring, and now it is officially Konoha Year 60. March 18th, a familiar date. It felt as though Yagyu's no-rules battle against Sasuke Uchiha from the previous year had just happened yesterday, and it was still a hot topic among their classmates. It was especially fresh in everyone's mind how, when school started in April, the students had spread word of Yagyu and Sasuke's epic fight. It led to countless underclassmen coming to sneak peeks at them through the windows. After all, being able to use elemental ninjutsu in the 5th grade was mind-blowing. Many students still hadn't even mastered the basic transformation technique, and their chakra reserves were so low that they could only use such techniques a few times. On the other hand, Sasuke Uchiha had demonstrated the Fireball Jutsu, a C-rank fire-style ninjutsu, while Yagyu had used the Water Wall, a B-rank water-style ninjutsu. Everyone believed that Yagyu and Sasuke already had the ability to graduate early. However, Iruka didn't submit a request to the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, for Yagyu and Sasuke to graduate early. Instead, he let them continue attending the academy for another year. When they were promoted to the 6th grade, both Yagyu and Sasuke became more reserved and low-key. During pop quizzes and unannounced tests, Sasuke stopped actively requesting Iruka to spar against Yagyu. Instead, he remained quietly in the background, training diligently. Yagyu followed suit. After their no-rules battle, Yagyu had figured out the mechanics of the game system's drop rates. When bound by formal rules, the hidden scoring system would lower his drop rate, making it much harder for him to get valuable items. Only in all-out battles, where both sides were using their full strength, could he maximize his score and increase both the drop rate and the likelihood of getting rare items. In the Ninja Academy, only no-rules battles allowed him to go all out. Such battles didn't happen during pop quizzes or surprise tests. And in the 6th grade, there were no more big exams, just the graduation exam. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to farm Indra's chakra from Suzuki for another year, Yagyu stopped attending school in person and began sending a shadow clone instead. His real body stayed at home, training in ninjutsu and increasing his strength. Other than occasionally training with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura during school breaks, Yagyu's real body almost never left home. But today was different. For the first time in a while, Yagyu skipped his usual morning training and didn't create a shadow clone. Instead, he dressed up carefully before heading out. Over the past year, Yagyu had grown a lot, being in the midst of his growth spurt. His height had shot up from 163 centimeters to 168 centimeters, making him tower over most of his classmates. With a ninja forehead protector, anyone unfamiliar with Yagyu would think he had already been a genin for several years. After all, in Shippuden, Naruto's height was only 166 centimeters, which made Yagyu 2 centimeters taller than him now. When Yagyu arrived at the academy, he didn't run into Hinata, Ino, or Sakura along the way. Over the past year, the three girls had realized that it was usually a shadow clone attending school, so they stopped trying to accidentally bump into him on the way. Yagyu, good morning. Yagyu, did you have breakfast? Once Yagyu sat down in the classroom, both Hinata and Sakura greeted him, while Ino asked a question only the four of them understood as code. Yeah, I did, Yagyu nodded. Hearing this, the eyes of all three girls lit up, and they eagerly began chatting with Yagyu. The phrase "I had breakfast" was their code for "this is my real body." After all, shadow clones don't eat. Seeing Hinata, Ino, and Sakura suddenly become much more enthusiastic, Nara Shikamaru, who was slumped over on his desk beside Yagyu, had a sharp glint flash in his eyes. So, it wasn't a falling out after all. Yagyu hadn't been attending in person this entire past year shadow clone jutsu. This guy had already mastered 2 B-rank jutsu. No, more importantly, Yagyu's chakra was strong enough to create a clone that could last an entire morning and afternoon, even completing all the exams. Just how much chakra does he have? Even someone as usually calm as Shikamaru felt a twinge of shock. No wonder neither Suzuki nor anyone else had been able to challenge Yagyu's top spot as the class's #1 student all these years. This guy was leagues ahead of them in terms of strength. What had happened to that purpose-driven kid from before that turned him into the person he was now at that moment? Shikamaru's curiosity about Yagyu reached its peak, but he didn't ask any questions. He knew Yagyu wouldn't answer. But one thing was for sure, Yagyu definitely had a Kekii Genkai. And that Kekii Genkai might be one that skipped generations. After all, Shikamaru couldn't think of any other explanation for such a drastic change in someone's abilities. Suddenly, a bold idea flashed through Shikamaru's mind. Silver hair, red eyes, and an enormous chakra reserve. Could Yagyu be a descendant of the Senju clan that had integrated into Konoha? If he remembered correctly, the second Hokage had those exact same hair and eye colors. Could Yagyu's massive chakra reserve mean that he had awakened the Senju bloodline? Yagyu, of course, had no idea what Shikamaru was thinking. If he did, he would have been startled. The guess was frighteningly close to the truth. Too bad no one could ever guess the existence of a mysterious game system. However, Shikamaru's theory provided a convenient cover for Yagyu's sage body. If Shikamaru had thought of it, others would surely come to the same conclusion. Once Yagyu's secret of having a massive chakra reserve was exposed, anyone who had seen the second Hokage in person or in photographs would assume Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju clan, not that he was hiding some greater secret. For Yagyu, this was great news. As the minutes ticked by, it was finally time for the graduation exam. The graduation exam is the clone technique. When I call your name, come forward, Irika announced, appearing briefly at the classroom door before leaving. Shortly after, a Chunin wearing a green vest showed up, holding a list of names. He started calling them out, Kaiba and Yazuka. One by one, the students who had spent 6 years together with Yagyu responded and left the classroom, never to return. Ino and Hinata were among those called as well. Yagyu. Before long, Yagyu heard his name. Standing up, Yagyu glanced at Sakura and said, "Good luck. I'll wait for you at the front entrance." You too. Good luck, Yagyu, Sakura replied with a smile and a nod. Yagyu exited the classroom and made his way to the exam room, where Irika and Mizuki were seated at a table. With a quick glance at Mizuki's friendly expression, Yagyu wasted no time forming hand seals, clone technique. With a poof sound like a balloon bursting, white smoke billowed from the exam room. When the smoke cleared, Yagyu emerged holding a ninja forehead protector. After exiting the building, he found Hinata and Ino waiting at the front entrance. Soon after, Sakura came out with her own forehead protector in hand. The group didn't leave the academy immediately. They waited in silence for the graduation exam to officially end. After all, they still had to take their official ID photos. Only once their photos were taken and their files entered into the system would they officially become genin. Of course, if their assigned Jonin sensei didn't approve of them, they would still be sent back to school for another year of training. Chapter 18, Team Assignments. Who will be in Yagyu's group? After Yagyu and the others finished taking their profile photos, the school gate was crowded with parents who had come to pick up their children. Some of the students, holding their ninja forehead protectors, were receiving praise from their parents. Others, who had failed the graduation exam, ran into their parents' arms in tears, being either comforted or scolded. Just like in the original story, Naruto sat on the swing, having failed the graduation exam. His expression was filled with deep disappointment. Many people noticed Naruto, and some shot him hateful glares, while others looked at him with disgust before turning away. Whispering could be heard among the parents as they gossiped about him. Yagyu also saw this, but he didn't go over to comfort Naruto. Despite how bad things looked for Naruto now, Yagyu knew that after today, Naruto's rise would begin. Meanwhile, Sasuke Uchiha's fate was about to take a darker turn. After parting ways with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura, Yagyu returned home. After dinner and a bath, Yagyu lay on the couch on his balcony, gazing at the star-filled sky and the high-hanging moon. As he admired the night sky, black shadows occasionally darted across the rooftops. On any other night, there were usually ninja on patrol who would flash across the rooftops with the body flicker technique. But tonight, the shadows moving across the rooftops were far more numerous than usual. Moreover, whenever one of these shadows stopped, they were all wearing green vests, signifying that they were at least Chunin ranked. From their behavior, it seemed like they were searching for something. Yagyu knew exactly what they were looking for. They were searching for Naruto. As expected, Naruto was either in the middle of learning or had already learned the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Like the Raise Nan, this A-rank forbidden jutsu would become one of Naruto's signature techniques in the future. The shadow clones, Raise Nan, and the Kyubi Chakra mode. Naruto didn't have as many flashy techniques as Sasuke, but with the help of his sage body and the kyubi, very few people could withstand his three-pronged attack. Yagyu was also quite envious of the multi-shadow clone jutsu. His own shadow clone jutsu could also create a large number of clones, but it took him time to do so. He couldn't create hundreds or thousands of clones in one go like the multi-shadow clone jutsu. The multi-shadow clone jutsu uses a massive amount of chakra to instantly create hundreds or thousands of clones. It was one of the jutsu developed by Tobirama Senju and is particularly suited to those with the sage body. Though envious, Yagyu had no intention of intervening in this event. It's often said that those involved in the situation can't see clearly, but outsiders can. The Hokage's office, being the most important place in Konoha, would surely be under constant watch by the Anbu. And something as important as the scroll of seals wouldn't just be lying around for anyone to take. Naruto only succeeded in obtaining the scroll because Hiruzen Sarutobi allowed it. The multi-shadow clone jutsu was Sarutobi's way of compensating the son of a hero, and it was a jutsu perfectly suited for Naruto. Naruto could steal and learn it without consequence, but if Yagyu dared to do the same, he'd probably be hauled off to the interrogation unit as soon as the incident ended. So, Yagyu had no interest in getting involved. After enjoying the starry sky for a while, Yagyu returned to his room to rest. The next morning, after washing up, Yagyu tied his ninja forehead protector around his arm and, after breakfast, headed out. Since school was officially on break, and only students who passed the graduation exam were attending, the Ninja Academy was unusually quiet. However, Yagyu still ran into several classmates along the way who greeted him, some from his class and others from neighboring ones, all proudly wearing their forehead protectors. Yagyu, good morning. When Yagyu entered the classroom, Hinata, Ino, and Sakura, as usual, had arrived early. Wherever they went, the three girls were always together. This trio had become quite famous at the academy. Thanks to them fending off fan groups for him, Yagyu didn't have to deal with being surrounded by a large crowd of girls like Sasuke often was. Due to their close-knit friendship, Ino, Sakura, and Hinata were often shunned by other girls at the academy. Many of the other girls in their class even isolated them. Thankfully, all three of them ranked in the top 10 of their year, or else a certain clique of girls would have probably found a way to teach them a lesson. After greeting Yagyu, Ino rested her chin on her hands, full of anticipation. We're about to be assigned to our teams. I wonder if we'll end up in the same group as you, Yagyu. Sakura and Hinata also looked hopeful. Before Yagyu could respond, Shikamaru, leaning on his desk with his head propped on one hand, yawned and said, "Maybe Sakura or Hinata, but you, Ino, not a chance." "Why not?" Ino asked. "It's simple. It's because our dads are too well known," Shikamaru replied lazily. "If Koji, you, and I weren't all the same age, then maybe you'd have a chance. But since we've been destined to be on the same team since birth, regardless of our grades. Just watch, our Jonin sensei won't be an ordinary Jonin. His job will be to train us to become the next generation of Ino Shikacho." "No way!" Ino shouted in frustration. "So I've been assigned since I first enrolled." "More like since we were born," Shikamaru added, his words crushing her hopes even more. Curious, Yagyu asked, "So, Shikamaru, can you guess who might be on my team?" "You're asking the right person. I've actually thought about that." Shikamaru perked up, clearly interested in the question. "I think there's a good chance that you'll be paired with either Sakura or Hinata." "Why is that?" Ino quickly asked, while Sakura and Hinata both looked delighted. "Well, you four have been practically inseparable for the past few years," Shikamaru explained. so, in terms of teamwork, you're already ahead of the other girls. Then there's your individual strengths. Yagyu is an all-rounder, while the three of you are more support-oriented. Considering the rapport you've built with Yagyu, it's very likely that either Hinata or Sakura will be assigned to the same team as him. Shikamaru's logic made perfect sense, and Sakura and Hinata's faces lit up with joy. Sakura, unable to hold back her excitement, asked, "Shikamaru, do you think I or Hinata have a better chance?" "It's you, Sakura," Shikamaru replied, pointing at her. "It's similar to my situation with Ino and Koji. There are other students from well-known clans in our class. Most of them will probably be grouped with others based on their specialties. This way, the village doesn't have to allocate too many resources, just assign a powerful jonin to lead them, and that's enough. Hinata has the Byakugan, which is a famous sensory ability. If I'm right, the best match for her team would be Kaiba from the Inyazuka clan and Shino from the Aberame clan. Together, they'd form the new sensory unit." Hearing this, Hinata's spirits immediately dropped. Meanwhile, Sakura's happiness was written all over her face, a beaming smile that contrasted with her two friends' more somber expressions. Luckily, thanks to Yagyu's influence, the three had become very close over the years. If they had the same shallow friendship they did in the original series, things might have escalated into a fight. "Wow, Shikamaru, you've really inherited the intelligence of the Nara clan." Yagyu clapped his hands, thoroughly impressed by Shikamaru's deduction. Chapter 19, Unexpected Team Assignments. Yagyu's importance. Just as Shikamaru Nara had analyzed, Yagyu had also thought about who his teammates might be. He used a process of elimination. Excluding himself, the most important students in the class were the Konoha 9, the 9 strongest students. Among them, Ino, Shikamaru, and Koji were guaranteed to be placed together. As Shikamaru had mentioned, their fathers were too famous. The entire ninja world knew about the Ino-Shikacho combination. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, would never miss the chance to cultivate the next generation of Ino-Shikacho. This was evident by how he had assigned his own son, Asuma Sarutobi, to guide the new Ino-Shikacho. After ruling them out, Yagyu considered the remaining 6 of the Konoha 9, Naruto, Sasuke, Kaiba, Shino, Hinata, and Sakura. Naruto and Sasuke were special cases, and it was clear that Sarutobi wouldn't separate them. That left Kaiba, Shino, Hinata, and Sakura. Among them, Hinata, Kaiba, and Shino all came from prominent clans, and it made sense that they would be grouped together with a skilled jonin leader to satisfy their powerful parents. Thus, Sakura was the most likely candidate to be Yagyu's teammate. However, if Sakura was placed in Team 7 with Naruto and Sasuke, that would leave a vacancy. If Sarutobi decided to group Yagyu with Sakura, then someone ordinary would need to fill the third spot on Naruto and Sasuke's team. Yagyu also considered the possibility that Sakura would still be placed in Team 7, and he might be teamed up with 2 average students or even assigned to the Anbu. No matter the outcome, Yagyu wasn't concerned. Graduating meant the plot of the story was starting, and the new cycle of destiny between Ashura and Indra had begun. The destined battle between these reincarnations would plunge the ninja world into chaos. No matter who his teammates were, Yagyu was confident that he would grow quickly. As Yagyu and his friends chatted, more and more students began to arrive. Naruto's appearance surprised many, but no one mocked him. Unfortunately, this meant the famous scene didn't happen. Without a girl he liked, Naruto, though still irritated by Sasuke's cool demeanor, didn't jump in front of him like in the original story. So, there was no legendary kiss fueled by classmates. Yagyu was a bit disappointed. Once all the students had arrived, Irika entered the classroom. Congratulations, from today, you are all officially genin. Looking around the room, Irika, who had been with these students for 6 years, wore an expression of deep pride. He suppressed his emotions, smiled, and said, however, you still have much to learn. Until you can stand on your own as ninja, you'll be placed in teams of 3 under a jonin instructor who will teach you how to become true ninja. Now, let's begin the team assignments. For Class 1. One by one, Irika called out names. As students were called, they either looked excited or disappointed. Soon enough, they reached Team 7. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, Harano Sakura. As Irika called the last name, Yagyu and his friend's expressions changed slightly. Sakura, who had been smiling ever since the team assignments started, froze. Shikamaru rubbed his chin, surprised. Looks like I was wrong. Things are going to get interesting. Yagyu was also surprised. Could it be that he would really be grouped with 2 ordinary students? Was the significance of being the top student so low, or was Sarutobi planning to recruit him into the Anbu? Irika's next words caused Yagyu's expression to shift again, while Hinata's face lit up with joy. Team 8, Yagyu, Abarame Shino, Hyaga Hinata. Team 9. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Koji, Yamanaka Ino. I can't believe it. I got so much wrong, Shikamaru muttered, rubbing his chin. His gaze fell on Kaiba, who was playing with his dog Akamaru, seemingly unconcerned with who his teammates were. Shikamaru couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for him. Poor guy, he's been left out. Excluding the Uchiha clan, which had been wiped out, there were 6 prominent ninja clans in the class. As Shikamaru had predicted, the new generation of Ino Shikacho had not been split up. However, what seemed like a certain grouping, Kaiba, Shino, and Hinata, ended up with only Shino and Hinata together. Kaiba didn't end up in a team with Sasuke either. This meant that Kaiba's team would be made up of ordinary students. With only one clan heir in the team, it meant Kaiba's jonin instructor probably wouldn't be a high-profile leader. Unless, of course, one of his clansmen personally requested to guide him. In any case, it was clear that Kaiba had been left behind. Even Yagyu hadn't expected to take Kaiba's place. Team 8 was essentially the strongest sensory team of the new generation. Its importance was clear when Hiruzen Sarutobi assigned Kurane Yui, a skilled jonin, to be their instructor. If Asuma Sarutobi hadn't died in the original story and had lived to the time of Boruto, he and Kurane would have become the mentors to the heirs of the 6 great ninja clans, including Ino Shikacho, Abarame, Inuzuka, and Hyaga. With connections like that, even if Asuma never became Hokage, he would still have had great influence in the village. In Yagyu's eyes, Team 8, like Ino Shikacho, was one of the teams that Sarutobi would never break up. To his surprise, Sarutobi had chosen to place Yagyu in Kaiba's spot. This bold move, which would certainly upset the Inuzuka clan, surprised Yagyu. Did the 3rd Hokage really believe so strongly in his potential, or perhaps, had Hiruzen Sarutobi been secretly watching him train all these years with his crystal ball jutsu? Can that jutsu even spy inside houses? The thought that Sarutobi might have seen him secretly practicing certain jutsu at home made Yagyu's heart sink. Team 12. After calling out the final team, Irika put down the list. He took one last look around the classroom, knowing it would be the last time he'd see them all together, a trace of sadness in his eyes. But he kept a smile on his face as he spoke, "Be sure to get along well with your new teammates. From now on, they'll be the comrades you'll fight alongside. Your jonin instructor will come to pick you up shortly." I hope that the next time we meet, you'll all have become outstanding ninja. With that, Irika quickly left the classroom. No one paid much attention to his departure, nor did anyone understand Irika's emotions at that moment. The students were all too focused on their futures as ninja, eagerly discussing their assigned Jonin instructors and speculating on how strong they might be. "Congratulations, Hinata," Ino said, her face full of envy. "I didn't expect you to be placed in Yagyu's team." At her words, Hinata immediately lowered her head, twiddling her fingers. A close observer might notice the slight upward curve of her lips, revealing her joy. Sakura, on the other hand, looked like a defeated puppy. She sat right behind Shikamaru and glared at the back of his head. She was so frustrated she almost wanted to awaken her second personality and punch Shikamaru into oblivion. His analysis had raised her hopes sky high, only for reality to pour cold water on them. The disappointment, it was too much. Chapter 20, The Humble Dog Licker, Main Quest. Third Team, come with me. I'm your Jonin instructor. Not long after Irika had left the classroom, a Jonin wearing a green vest appeared at the doorway. Fifth Team, follow me. As soon as the third team had left, another Jonin appeared at the entrance. The classroom, which had been full of students, quickly began to empty. In no time, only about a dozen students were left in the classroom. Unlike Kakashi, who was known for being late, Kurane Uehai did not keep Yagyu and his team waiting. Soon, a voluptuous woman with black hair and striking red eyes, like Yagyu's, appeared at the classroom door. After scanning the room, her gaze fell on Yagyu, and she smiled. "Team 8, come with me. I'm your Jonin instructor." Before Yagyu and his team could stand up, another bearded man appeared at the door and also looked toward Yagyu's group. "Team 10, come with me." As Kurane's admirer, Asuma Sarutobi had clearly left the Hokage's office at the same time as her. "We're heading out, Sakura. Don't forget to visit us during the break," Ino said. "Yeah, see you," Sakura replied. Yagyu and the others said goodbye to Sakura, who was forcing a smile, and then left the classroom. "Kurane, should we let the kids meet each other first?" Asuma asked, his intentions obvious to anyone paying attention. Following behind them, Shikamaru slightly furrowed his brow. Their Jonin instructor didn't seem very reliable. Kurane glanced at Asuma, who had already lit a cigarette again, and frowned. "There's no need, you already know how their relationships are. Also, Asuma, could you stop smoking in front of ladies?" Sorry. Asuma hurriedly put out his cigarette, looking so humble that his image as a Jonin crumbled instantly in the eyes of Team 8 and Team 10. Ino was particularly exasperated. Not only was she not in Yagyu's team, but now her Jonin instructor was a chain smoker. Yagyu, however, was deep in thought. Was it possible that their relationship hadn't advanced yet? If he remembered correctly, in the original story, when Ataki Uchiha returned to the village, Kurane and Asuma were already dating and happened to meet Kakashi on the street, right? That was after the Konoha Crush incident. Could it be that their relationship didn't progress until after Hiruzen Sarutobi's death? Thinking about this possibility, Yagyu looked at Asuma with a hint of disdain. Good grief, using a tragedy to get close to someone, how pathetic of a licking dog could you be? Hey! What kind of looks are you kids giving me? Asuma asked, blushing as he noticed the piercing stares of Yagyu and the others. Ino, who had never been subtle, gave him a pitiful look, almost making Asuma lose his composure. Only now did Asuma realize how badly he had messed up his image in front of the students. Great, now his authority as their teacher was in ruins. Goodbye, Yagyu. Don't forget to visit me at the flower shop when you have time, Ino said as she waved goodbye. After leaving the school building, Team 8 and Team 10 went their separate ways. Kurane didn't take her team to one of the school's training grounds. Instead, she led Yagyu, Shino, and Hinata out of the village's main street to a deserted training ground in the wilderness. This training ground was very similar to the one used by the original Team 7. In fact, most of the outdoor training grounds were nearly identical. Stopping in front of a wooden post, Kurane turned to face her 3 students and smiled, "Before you can handle missions on your own, we'll be spending a lot of time together. Let's introduce ourselves. I'll go first as an example. My name is Kurane Uehai. You can call me Kurane-sensei. My specialty is genjutsu. My favorite foods are sake, vodka, and wasabi octopus, and I dislike cake. My dream is to become a kunoichi as powerful as Lady Tsunade." After she finished her introduction, Kurane's gaze shifted to Yagyu. Unlike elite jonin like Kakashi, Asuma, and Guy, Kurane had only recently been promoted to jonin. When she learned that she would be a jonin instructor along with the others, she felt a bit slighted when Kakashi and the others didn't include her in their bets on who would produce the best students. Though she kept her feelings to herself, deep down, she was determined to prove them wrong. When she received her student list from the 3rd Hokage, Kurane's focus wasn't on Hinata, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, nor on Shino, the heir of the Aberame clan. Her attention was on Yagyu, the top student in their year. After learning that Yagyu had consistently outperformed the heirs of several prominent clans, Kurane placed her hopes on him. She was determined to train Yagyu into an exceptional shinobi and use the Chunin exams or other contests to show up Kakashi and the others. Yagyu, unaware of Kurane's thoughts, saw her gaze fall on him and immediately introduced himself. "My name is Yagyu. I know a variety of jutsu, but I'm best at water-style techniques. I like spicy food and dislike sour and bitter things. My dream is to become an excellent ninja." The first part of his introduction was true, but the part about his dream was just to satisfy Kurane. In truth, Yagyu's dream was to collect all the valuable powers and become a well-rounded, sage-level ninja. This had been his goal since awakening his game system, his main quest. "I'm Hinata Hyuga. I specialize in the Hyuga clan's gentle fist and sensory techniques. My favorite foods are red bean soup, cinnamon rolls, and cold dishes. I dislike shrimp and crab. My dream is also to become an excellent ninja." Hinata's voice was soft as she introduced herself, but she didn't bow her head or show any signs of shyness. Her dream was no longer to gain her father's approval. Thanks to Yagyu's influence, Hinata hadn't made Hayashi Hyuga feel disappointed in her. Hayashi and Inoichi Yamanaka had secretly observed their children's training more than once, so they knew exactly how strong their children had become. Compared to other ninja clan heirs, Hinata was more than competent. Under Yagyu's influence, she wasn't as timid or self-deprecating as she had been in the original story. However, her true dream was still a mystery to everyone. After Hinata's introduction, Shino Aberame spoke up. "My name is Shino Aberame. I specialize in my clan's secret techniques. I like vegetable salads and winter melon, and I dislike foods that are too strong in flavor. My dream is to discover a new species of insect." "Very good, I now know your specialties and preferences." Kurane nodded approvingly and smiled. "But I still don't know much about your skills. So, tomorrow at 8 a.m., meet me here. We're going to have a survival training exercise. For now, you're dismissed." With that, Kurane vanished in a blur of speed. Chapter 21, A World for Two with Hinata. Yagyu, should we come up with a battle plan or set some traps here? Shino Aberame asked after Kurane left, seeking Yagyu's opinion. This action showed that Shino had ceded the position of Team 8's leader to Yagyu. In the original story, Kaiba Inyazuka seemed to be the leader of Team 8. However, in reality, Shino was the backbone of the team. For minor matters, Shino would let Kaiba make decisions. But when it came to more important situations, Shino would not back down and could assert authority over both Hinata and Kaiba. But now, Shino had willingly stepped aside, choosing to act as Yagyu's second-in-command not because Yagyu was the top student, but because he had no choice. Unless Shino wanted to be isolated, he had to concede. Hinata would naturally follow Yagyu's lead now that they were in the same team. It would be 2 against 1, so if Shino wanted to stay in Team 8, he had to step aside. Yagyu was pleased with Shino's insight and smiled. It's still early, and Kurane-sensei didn't start the test right away, which means she's giving us time to prepare. However, even if we work together and set traps, there's no way we can win against Kurane-sensei, who's a jonin. So, the main purpose of this survival exercise is, as Kurane-sensei said, to assess our abilities and teamwork. No need to set traps. If we get caught in Kurane-sensei's genjutsu, those traps could backfire on us. Let's share our individual strengths, come up with a simple plan, and give it our all. Unlike Kakashi, Kurane hadn't threatened them with the idea that failing the survival exercise would result in being sent back to the academy. Only students who were truly lacking in skill or unwilling to cooperate with their teammates would be sent back for retraining. For Yagyu and his team, who were all top students, even if their teamwork wasn't great, they wouldn't be sent back because there was nothing more the academy could teach them. That's why Kurane didn't use the threat of being sent back as a motivator like Kakashi did. In fact, she cherished her talented students too much for that. Noticing this, Yagyu felt confident. All right, Shino agreed with Yagyu's approach. As they walked back along the path, they discussed their abilities and jutsu. When Yagyu finished explaining his techniques, Hinata glanced at his profile with admiration in her eyes. Shino, though outwardly calm, was likely shocked beneath his sunglasses. If Shino had removed his glasses, his pupils would likely have shrunk in surprise. In his mind, Shino was shaken. He had thought Yagyu's mastery of the B-rank water release, water wall at such a young age was impressive enough. But now it seemed that Yagyu had been hiding far more than expected. No wonder Sasuke Uchiha could never beat him. In fact, not even a group of ninja clan heirs could hope to match Yagyu. Yagyu probably had the skills to graduate from the academy during his first year. After sharing their skills, the 3 of them came up with a simple plan. They agreed that if any new ideas came up, they could revise the plan the next morning. When they returned to the village center, Team 8 dispersed. Yagyu and Hinata walked together through the streets. For the first time since they were 3 years old, they were alone together. Yagyu, as a commoner without a surname, had never been allowed into the Hyuga clan's compound. Even Sakura didn't have that privilege. Only Ino could visit Hinata's home and invite her out to play. Whenever Hinata went out, she was always accompanied by a bodyguard or by Ino. Hinata, lost in thought, remembered a snowy night 9 years ago. She could almost see the past with her Byakugan. It was the same as that night when Yagyu had walked her home. 9 years had passed since then, and the boy she admired had become unmatched in his excellence. As she secretly stole glances at Yagyu's handsome profile and recalled their memories together, a smile crept onto her lips, her heart feeling as sweet as honey. At that moment, Yagyu suddenly turned to her, catching her gaze. Startled, Hinata quickly lowered her head and nervously twirled her fingers. Amused by her cuteness, Yagyu asked with a smile, "Hinata, do you want to come to my place and train together?" Hinata mumbled in a barely audible voice, her head still lowered. Yagyu was used to her shyness by now. A timid girl like her agreeing to come to his house alone was already a brave decision. Yagyu had expected her to decline. Seeing that Hinata had agreed, Yagyu felt delighted. Being assigned to Team 8 was a pleasant surprise for him. He had been worried about how he could invite Hinata out without Ino's help. But now that they were teammates, Yagyu would have plenty of time to spend with her, growing closer while also aiming to unlock the Byakugan through his system. After arriving at his home, Yagyu created a shadow clone to prepare lunch while he and Hinata went to the training room for a taijutsu sparring match. Yagyu knew that only through training could Hinata become more comfortable being around him. After all, the moment she entered his house, she realized how bold her decision had been and had spent the entire time with her head down, her face flushed red. Yagyu planned to wait until Hinata became fully comfortable before suggesting they train outside in more intense, no-holds-barred sparring matches. Unless he experienced the same beginner's luck he had when the system first awakened, no-holds-barred matches were his best chance of unlocking valuable abilities like the Byakugan. As expected, even after repeatedly defeating Hinata in their taijutsu sparring match, Yagyu didn't see any glowing light, signaling a new ability drop. But Yagyu had already grown accustomed to this after the past year. Once his shadow clone finished cooking, Yagyu invited Hinata to stay for lunch. She accepted, as she had grown used to Yagyu cooking for them over the years. She, Ino, and Sakura had often stayed at his house for meals. Normally, she would have helped with the cooking by creating a shadow clone, but Hinata had been so flustered earlier that she hadn't thought to offer. Now, looking back, Hinata felt embarrassed. She had allowed Yagyu to cook while she ate without helping. Oblivious to her thoughts, Yagyu noticed that she was quieter than usual and didn't seem to be eating with her normal appetite. He thought she just wasn't used to being alone with him yet, and he chuckled softly to himself. After lunch, Hinata took the initiative to clear the table and wash the dishes. Seeing this, Yagyu didn't stop her. Once she finished the dishes, Hinata didn't leave right away. She began tidying up the house, as she and the others often did to show their appreciation to Yagyu. It had become a habit for them. Only after cleaning up did Hinata finally say goodbye and hurriedly leave. Aside from being focused during their sparring, Hinata had acted like a shy ostrich the whole time. Yagyu couldn't help but wish that the technology of the world had advanced enough for portable cameras. If it had, he would have captured all of Hinata's adorable expressions on camera. Chapter 22, Team 8 vs Kurane. The next morning, at 7 a.m. Yagyu had already finished his daily training and was taking a shower. Meanwhile, his shadow clone was preparing breakfast. When the clone brought the food out and dispersed into a puff of smoke, Yagyu emerged from the bathroom just in time. After finishing breakfast, Yagyu headed to his room to change clothes. He put on a white inner shirt, a black windbreaker, black ninja pants, and ninja shoes. After fastening his ninja tools pouch and headband, he went to the bathroom to put in his red-colored contact lenses. Dressed and ready, Yagyu left his house, heading toward the training grounds. It was only 7:25 a.m. When he arrived at the training ground, Yagyu was surprised to find that he was the last one to arrive. "Good morning, Hinata, Shino," Yagyu greeted them with a wave. "Good morning, Yagyu-kun," Hinata replied immediately, still using honorifics when addressing him. Shino Abarame, who stood with his hands in his pockets leaning against a wooden post, gave a slight nod. "Morning." Yagyu didn't mind Shino's reserved attitude. While others might think Shino was acting cool, Yagyu, as someone who had lived in another world, knew that Shino was simply not very talkative and had a more reserved personality. Deep down, Shino was eager for friendship and acknowledgement. By the time of the Boruto series, Shino had even let go of his old demeanor and became much more relaxed. With a shy Hinata and a reserved Shino, Yagyu wasn't sure what to talk about. If Shino weren't around, he might have teased Hinata a little. But with Shino's insect-based sensory abilities nearby, Yagyu thought better of it. Even if Hinata didn't faint from embarrassment, Shino would surely record the moment in his mental log of Yagyu's potential blackmail material. So, Yagyu simply leaned against a post, closed his eyes, and waited for Kurane to arrive. Time passed slowly, and soon it was 8 a.m. whoosh. Kurane Yui appeared right on time, instantly arriving in front of Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino. If the three of them had wristwatches, they might have checked the time and wondered if Kurane had been waiting nearby all along, since her timing was impeccable. "It looks like you're all ready, so let's get started." Seeing the three of them alert and prepared, Kurane took out 3 bells from her ninja pouch and dangled them in front of Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino. She smiled and said, "Your task is simple, try to take these 3 bells from me." After speaking, Kurane attached the bells to her waist and faced them. "Now, begin." Whoosh! As soon as Kurane finished speaking, all 3 of them vanished in a blur. Kurane stood in place, one hand resting on her hip. She didn't immediately rush to find Yagyu and the others, nor did she use any sensory jutsu to locate them. Instead, she stood there, waiting like a target to see what they would do. Unlike Kakashi, who had only 2 bells and imposed a time limit, Kurane's test for Team 8 was the least difficult among all the Jonin instructors. Perhaps this was just a show of her gentle nature. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Seeing that Kurane hadn't moved and appeared to be inviting them to attack, someone in Team 8 quickly lost their patience. 3 kunao flew out from a dense tree, whistling through the air and aimed directly at Kurane's head. The precision of the throws, even from such a distance, showed the impressive skill of the person behind them. Faced with the incoming kunao, Kurane didn't dodge. Instead, the kunao sank into her head thunk, and with a puff of smoke, she transformed into a log. When the smoke cleared, a piece of wood with the 3 kunao stuck in it lay on the ground, while Kurane emerged from behind another wooden post. Substitution jutsu. It seemed Kurane was telling them with her actions that she wasn't going all out but would be holding back to test them. Next, 3 black spheres flew out from another tree. The precision was again remarkable. The spheres landed in front, to the left, and to the right of Kurane. Poof, poof, poof! White smoke burst from the ground, shrouding Kurane in a thick cloud. 8 trigrams palm, air palm. A young girl's voice called out. Hinata appeared in a blur, striking her palm toward the smoke. A twisted gust of air shot from her hand, flying straight into the cloud. The smoke dissipated as the wind blew it away, revealing Kurane's figure. However, Kurane's body appeared distorted, like a mirage, gradually fading until she disappeared completely. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged behind Hinata. Since she hadn't activated her Byakugan, it seemed Hinata hadn't noticed the figure. Just as the shadowy figure was about to attack, Hinata's body exploded into a puff of white smoke, poof, vanishing from sight. Seeing this, Kurane stepped out from behind another wooden post, a surprised look on her face. A shadow clone jutsu. Just like how Sasuke Uchiha had surprised Kakashi by using the fireball jutsu, Hinata's use of the shadow clone jutsu at her age shocked Kurane. This meant that Hinata's chakra reserves far exceeded the norm for someone her age. But Kurane's surprises weren't over yet. Water release, Great Waterfall Jutsu. A voice called out from behind, and a massive torrent of water, towering at least 5 or 6 meters high, came crashing toward Kurenai. Turning her head to glance at the approaching wave, Kurenai's eyes widened in shock before she quickly used the body flicker technique to evade it. Boom! The massive wave crashed onto the ground with a deafening roar. As the water began to recede, 2 figures raced across the surface, charging toward Kurenai. The 2 identical figures were both Yagyu. Watching them approach, Kurenai's eyes were still filled with shock. Creating such a huge volume of water in a dry environment. Such chakra reserves, can he really be a genin? But with Yagyu and his clone closing in, Kurenai didn't have time to ponder Yagyu's secrets any longer. Instinctively, she pulled out a kunao from her pouch, preparing to test Yagyu's close combat skills. However, what happened next made her eyes widen even further in disbelief. Water release, Great Waterfall Jutsu. One of the Yagyus leaped backward, forming hand signs in mid-air, and unleashed another torrent of water from his mouth. The massive wave wasn't aimed at Kurenai but at the other Yagyu ahead. The Yagyu in front raised his right hand, palm facing upward, as if he intended to catch the oncoming wave. Chapter 23, Spiral Water Tornado. Yagyu's True Strength. Spiral Water Tornado. As the massive wave came crashing down, threatening to drench Yagyu completely, something unexpected happened. Just as the water was about to engulf him, it began to converge toward his raised hand, as though magnetically drawn. A terrifying rotational force appeared from nowhere, causing the water to swirl rapidly. In mere moments, the water transformed into a gigantic water tornado. Once the water tornado was fully formed, Yagyu flung it toward Kurenai. Despite its fluid nature, the water tornado resembled a giant spinning top, carving a deep trench into the ground as it moved. The intense suction force ripped the surrounding grass from the ground and caused Kurenai's body to lean slightly forward. Watching the incoming water tornado, Kurenai, who specialized in genjutsu, found herself with no way to counter it. She had no choice but to use the body flicker technique to evade, just as she had done earlier. The massive water tornado barreled into the forest, uprooting trees and leaving the ground in chaos. Both Hinata and Shino, who had been hiding in the trees, were left astounded by the sheer power of the technique. Having never encountered a tailed beast before, neither of them had ever seen a jutsu of such destructive force. What made it even more frightening was the fact that this formidable jutsu was a jutsu without hand signs. Kurenai, watching Yagyu dispel his shadow clone and appear to be panting heavily, couldn't help but be amazed. At that moment, she saw a familiar figure in Yagyu, a figure reminiscent of Kakashi Hatake. At the age of 12, Kakashi had developed the A-rank lightning-style jutsu, Chidori. Now, Yagyu had developed a water-style technique that didn't require hand seals. Kurenai was certain she had never seen or even heard of such a water jutsu before. Just yesterday, she had specifically gathered information on her 3 students. She knew about Yagyu's background and history, and this jutsu couldn't have come from his parents. It was even more unlikely that someone else had taught him. If anyone in the village knew such a jutsu, they would be famous by now. There was only one explanation: Yagyu had created it himself. Is this the world of geniuses? Kurenai mused to herself. Fortunately for her, Yagyu lacked battle experience. Had he managed to hit her with that attack, she would have been severely injured. Even a glancing blow could have left her in a very embarrassing state. But the fact that such a genius was her student filled Kurenai with joy. She looked at Yagyu with admiration, as though he were a precious treasure. At the same time, Kurenai wasn't slow to act. She began forming hand seals, channeling her powerful yin-release chakra into Yagyu's mind. Suddenly, Yagyu's body stiffened, as though bound by invisible ropes, standing rigid in place. From Yagyu's perspective, he indeed felt as if he had been tied up. A large tree had appeared behind him out of nowhere, and vines, like tendrils, wrapped tightly around him, binding him to the tree. This was none other than Kurene's signature technique, demonic illusion, tree binding death. However, despite being bound, Yagyu smiled confidently. "Sensei, you've already lost." Kurene, who had just subdued Yagyu with her genjutsu and was about to move on to test the others, paused in surprise. She quickly glanced down at her waist, as if realizing something. The 3 bells hanging from her waist were gone. Kurene's expression shifted. She mentally replayed the previous moments and quickly deduced when the bells had disappeared. Letting out a wry smile, she dispelled Yagyu's genjutsu and said, "No wonder you charged at me so openly. This was your strategy all along." "That's right," Yagyu said, smiling confidently as Hinata and Shino emerged from the forest. "The water-style jutsu I used is one I developed myself, but I didn't think it would be enough to defeat you, Sensei. My role was to distract you, drawing all your attention, while Shino went for the bells." As soon as Yagyu finished speaking, Shino took out the 3 bells and tossed 2 of them to Yagyu and Hinata. Shino had used his insects to steal the bells. With Kurene's focus entirely on Yagyu, and without using her sensory jutsu, she hadn't noticed the insects creeping up to her. Clap, clap, clap. Kurene applauded, offering praise without hesitation. "A brilliant strategy. I admit defeat." Whoosh! Just as Kurene spoke, a blue light flickered from her body. A moment later, a blue beam shot out from her, hovering above the ground and forming a floating blue orb. Seeing this, Yagyu froze briefly before a smile spread across his face. A drop. The game system had triggered an item drop. As long as there was a victory, there was always a chance to trigger this effect. Kurene's verbal surrender had triggered a blue orb. "Looks like I got lucky this time," Yagyu thought. A few seconds later, the blue orb floated toward Yagyu and merged into his body. He didn't immediately open his inventory to check the contents, though. Instead, he deactivated his Sharingan and blinked a few times to make sure his contact lenses were still in place. Yes, Yagyu had already awakened his Sharingan. Half a year ago, during an intense training session, Yagyu had entered a state of deep concentration. When he finally snapped out of it, he realized that his vision had changed dramatically. His dynamic vision had become so sharp that he could even track the flutter of a fly's wings in slow motion. At that moment, Yagyu knew that his Sharingan had awakened. And not just any Sharingan, his eyes had manifested the 2 Tomo Sharingan upon awakening. Whether it was due to his immense mental energy or the influence of Ashura's chakra, Yagyu wasn't sure. During the past year, Yagyu had also been secretly training a specific jutsu, the Raise Nan. The spiral water tornado he had used earlier was a combination of the Raise Nan and the Great Waterfall jutsu. As one of Naruto's signature moves, the Raise Nan was the only A-rank jutsu in the original series where both the principles and training methods were fully explained. When Yagyu first arrived in this world, he had quickly written down the training steps for the Raise Nan, knowing it would likely be the most powerful jutsu he could learn in this lifetime. As for advanced forms of the Raise Nan, like the Rasen Shuriken or other variations, Yagyu hadn't held out much hope. But after his game system awakened and he acquired Ashura's chakra from Naruto, Yagyu became even more determined to master the Raise Nan. Like the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the Raise Nan was incredibly well suited for those with the Sage of 6 Paths body. What was a powerful jutsu to others became something Yagyu could use freely, even creating multiple shadow clones to use it simultaneously. This combination technique was an overwhelming force against any opponent of the same level. Once Yagyu had fused Ashura's chakra, he immediately began secretly training in the Raise Nan. Unfortunately, Yagyu's natural talent was quite average, and he got stuck at the first stage of training. It wasn't until he unlocked something from Sakura that his talent seemed to skyrocket. That item was Chakra Control. Chapter 24, A Mentor and Illusion Expert. Although Sakura's chakra control was categorized as blue tier and couldn't compare to the battle-ready Kekii Genkai, in Yagyu's eyes, her chakra control was absolutely on par with the red tier bloodline limits. This talent transformed Yagyu's natural abilities from ordinary to genius level. By the time Yagyu was in his third year, he had already mastered all the jutsu left behind by his parents. By 6th grade, he had successfully learned the Raise Nan he had been secretly practicing, along with its combination technique, the Spiral Water Tornado, which combined with Water Style, Great Waterfall Jutsu. Despite not having graduated yet, Yagyu had mastered multiple jutsu, including 2 or more of B and A rank techniques. All of this was thanks to his refined chakra control and the Shadow Clone Jutsu. With the right talent and the ability to grind, Yagyu would have learned even more if only he had more scrolls available. Otherwise, he would have mastered far more jutsu by now. As Yagyu was testing his contact lenses to see if they had shifted, Kurenai smiled again and said, "I'm very satisfied with your performance. Since it's still early, let's do a mission together, and then I'll treat you all to barbecue." With that, Kurenai shifted from being their elder to acting like a big sister, placing her arm around Hinata's shoulder, walking alongside Yagyu and the others. As they walked, Kurenai couldn't help but ask curiously, "Yagyu, how did you come up with that hand seal-less water style technique?" "It was just a spark of inspiration," Yagyu replied. "From my father's ninja diary, I learned that ninja could gather chakra at their feet to walk on walls, so I tried it and realized I could control chakra flow perfectly. That's probably why none of the scrolls my parents left behind posed any difficulty for me. When I went to school, I saw a picture of a tornado in one of the textbooks. Seeing the rotation of the wind sparked a bold idea: could I gather chakra in my hand, make it rotate, and combine wind or water to create a tornado or a water vortex? After some attempts, I found that gathering chakra wasn't difficult, but combining the spinning chakra with water took countless tries. It wasn't until a few months ago that I finally succeeded. Is this the genius's spark of inspiration?" After hearing Yagyu's explanation, both Kurenai and Shino, and even Hinata, who admired Yagyu deeply, were left speechless. The principle Yagyu explained sounded simple, and their minds were already telling them, "I get it, I've learned it." But their hands betrayed them, screaming, "No, you haven't." Being able to develop such a hand seal-less jutsu on his own was something only a talent like Yagyu could achieve. However, after hearing how Yagyu gathered chakra, Kurenai suddenly had a flash of inspiration. She remembered a nearly legendary hand seal-less jutsu and couldn't help but ask, "Yagyu, have you heard of the Raise Nan?" Yagyu's mind lit up, and inwardly, he smiled. "She's taken the bait. I've found my backer." Feigning confusion, Yagyu looked at Kurenai. "Raise Nan." The Raise Nan is an A-rank jutsu developed by the 4th Hokage, and it's also hand seal-less, Kurenai explained while recalling its appearance. It's a technique where chakra is gathered into a ball in the palm and rotates at high speed. It's similar to the way you rotate chakra in your hand. A chakra ball. Yagyu pretended to be deep in thought. Then he raised his hand, and a blue chakra vortex began to form in his palm. The chakra vortex grew larger but didn't coalesce into a ball. Instead, it transformed into a miniature blue tornado. A moment later, the blue tornado compressed into a ball, spinning rapidly for a few seconds before bursting, creating a gust of wind that fluttered their clothes. Despite the failure, Yagyu's face lit up with excitement. "Sensei, it seems this method might work. Don't try it recklessly, be careful," Kurane said, patting Yagyu on the shoulder and reassuring him. "I know the fourth Hokage's disciple. I'll ask them about the details of the raised nan for you." "There's no need, Sensei," Yagyu said confidently. "Now that I know it's a rotating chakra ball, I'm sure I'll master it." At that moment, Yagyu seemed to radiate confidence. Shino and Hinata once again felt the vast gap between themselves and Yagyu. Even Kurane was taken aback by Yagyu's presence. She had to admit that this 12-year-old boy, who was almost as tall as her, had an impressive aura. No wonder Kakashi was so popular in school when he was younger. Such a powerful presence is irresistible to girls. Rather than discouraging Yagyu's confidence, Kurane smiled and advised, "Just be careful during your training, and use shadow clones to assist you." "I understand, Sensei," Yagyu replied obediently, nodding. His respectful and eager-to-learn attitude made Kurane like him even more. Right now, Yagyu was Kurane's most treasured student. She believed that, in the future, he would be her proudest student as well. On their way to the Hokage's office, Yagyu discreetly summoned the virtual panel that only he could see. He checked the blue orb he had received from Kurane. A moment later, the information about the blue orb appeared. "Illusion Expert Blue." Seeing the words, Yagyu's eyes lit up. With Sakura as an example, Yagyu didn't need to guess this illusion expert was another innate ability. If he could obtain something like chakra control as a talent, then getting a genjutsu talent wasn't too surprising. Although Kurane wasn't as famous as elite genin like Kakashi, Asuma, or Guy, she was still an outstanding genin compared to others. In Konoha, she was renowned as a genjutsu expert. In the original series, her poor performance was because her opponents were overpowered. Itaki Uchiha was a genjutsu master second only to Shisui, and Yakumo Kurama was a chosen prodigy from the Kurama clan, essentially the Aizen of the Naruto world. Facing such opponents, it was perfectly normal for Kurane, who specialized in genjutsu, to be defeated swiftly. However, as a regular ninja without a Kekii Genkai, Kurane had reached the pinnacle of what she could achieve. Illusion Expert perfectly encapsulated her natural talent in genjutsu. By merging this orb, Yagyu knew he would become a genjutsu prodigy, even without the Sharingan. Without hesitation, Yagyu fused the orb. As the light merged with his body, Yagyu didn't notice any immediate changes, just as he hadn't when he fused with the Sharingan. The real difference would become apparent once he began studying genjutsu. Chapter 25, 3 Tomo Sharingan, The Legend of the Eyes. Time passed quickly, like a swing gently moving forward from late March to early June. Over the past 2 months, the new generation of genin, the 60th class, had been completing various D-rank missions. These D-rank missions mostly involved helping villagers with trivial tasks, such as babysitting, assisting with farm work, clearing debris from ditches, and so on. The rewards for these missions were minimal, and a large portion of the earnings was divided among the village, their jonin mentor, and their teammates. For those lacking patience, these tasks could become incredibly frustrating, especially for Team 7, who had just graduated and were dreaming of missions involving the protection of high-profile figures or fierce battles against strong enemies. On the other hand, Team 8 approached these missions dutifully. Yagyu and his team understood that these D-rank missions not only tested their patience but also helped build teamwork. Therefore, neither Yagyu nor Hinata used shadow clones to complete these tasks, they carried them out personally. Unlike the more laid-back Kakashi, Kurane Yui, in her first role as a Jonin mentor, was extremely attentive to her students. After each mission, she would teach Yagyu and the others techniques that were typically learned by genin, such as tree climbing and water walking skills Yagyu and Hinata had already mastered. She also conducted chakra nature tests for the team and even brought out genjutsu scrolls to see if anyone possessed yin nature chakra. After all these tests, Kurane became even more attached to Yagyu as a student. She had the feeling that Yagyu was a perfect student, sent by fate, to inherit the teachings of the Yui family. Shino and Hinata lacked the aptitude to learn genjutsu, as they didn't possess yin nature chakra. For a mentor who specialized in genjutsu, like Kurane, there wasn't much left for her to teach them beyond basic ninja skills. When it came to their clan-specific techniques, Kurane had no authority to make suggestions. Yagyu, on the other hand, learned the genjutsu from Kurane's scrolls in just one day. This meant that not only did he possess yin nature chakra, but he also had an exceptional talent for genjutsu. As a result, Kurane devoted herself to nurturing Yagyu's abilities, often giving him personal lessons in front of Shino and Hinata. Over these 2 months, Yagyu's skills had grown immensely. His understanding of genjutsu had progressed from novice to surpassing his peers. Even if he relied solely on genjutsu, Yagyu was confident that he could defeat any of the 12 Konoharukis. This was largely due to the fact that his Sharingan had finally evolved into a 3-tomo Sharingan. All of this was thanks to his illusion expert talent. Genjutsu is a yin-natured technique, while the Sharingan, a yin-nature Keki-I Genkai, is also referred to as the illusion eye. However, before the evolution to 3-tomo, the Sharingan primarily functioned as an eye for perception and copying. The 3-tomo Sharingan was what made the Uchiha clan renowned throughout the ninja world, making them nearly unbeatable in one-on-one combat. The legendary Mangeki Sharingan was an even more powerful version of this eye. Every Uchiha who mastered the 3-tomo Sharingan to its full potential became an elite Jonin, genjutsu specialist, and a nightmare for those reliant on genjutsu. This bloodline was so overpowered that a single glance could cast genjutsu without any need for hand seals. If the opponent was a genjutsu user, unless their yin nature chakra was stronger than that of the Uchiha, the Sharingan naturally reflected the genjutsu back at them. In the original series, Kurane herself had experienced this firsthand when her genjutsu was reflected by Ataki Uchiha. This is why, when fighting against someone from the Uchiha clan, a ninja without sufficient countermeasures was essentially fighting with one eye closed. In a real-life battle, getting hit by a finishing move meant actual death. Yagyu's mastery of yin nature chakra, further honed through his genjutsu training, naturally led his Sharingan to evolve into its 3-tomo form. With this evolution into the illusion eye, Yagyu's genjutsu skills soared to unprecedented levels, as though his abilities were enhanced by a cheat code. The genjutsu techniques that Kurane taught him were not only quickly mastered, but Yagyu also found that he could cast them without needing to form hand seals. By the time he fully controlled his 3-tomo Sharingan, his proficiency in genjutsu had surpassed even Kurane's. This was the difference between a normal person and someone with a cheat-level ability. This was the legend of the eyes. No one understood this feeling better than Rock Lee from the original series. In addition to his growth in strength, Yagyu's relationship with Hinata had also made incredible progress during these 2 months. After each mission, Yagyu would invite Hinata to his home for training. Despite her shyness, Hinata never refused his invitations. At first, Yagyu was very gentlemanly and reserved, only acting as Hinata's sparring partner. But as Hinata gradually grew accustomed to being alone with Yagyu, the so-called master of nurturing began his next steps. During their taijutsu sparring, Yagyu no longer stopped at simply blocking or parrying. The training became more chaotic, and Yagyu would secretly activate his Sharingan to spot Hinata's weak points, using gentle force to create mistakes that led to moments of close physical contact. Yagyu's training methods were highly effective. At first, Hinata would turn beet red and even faint at the slightest touch, but since Yagyu never crossed any lines, she slowly adapted, eventually becoming immune to these moments of physical closeness. After each training session, Hinata would stay to eat at Yagyu's house. She felt more comfortable there since she was still too reserved to fully relax at home, especially since her father and sister were unaware of her big appetite. Only Yagyu would prepare large amounts of food for her, allowing her to eat freely. Learning from her earlier embarrassment, Hinata began creating shadow clones to help Yagyu's shadow clone with the cooking and house chores. Since Yagyu provided all the food, and she was the one who ate the most, Hinata also started giving Yagyu her share of the mission rewards. Yagyu didn't refuse. After all, ever since graduating from the academy, the village had stopped providing him with allowances. And without any high-level missions under his belt yet, Yagyu barely earned enough to cover Hinata's meals. Thus, Yagyu and Hinata had essentially begun living a married life in advance. While helping Yagyu clean his home, Hinata even started washing his clothes. Every time, Yagyu would praise Hinata for her diligence, telling her she would make a great wife, leaving the girl blushing and more determined than ever to please him. Thankfully, after graduation, Hayashi Hyuga had shifted his focus to Hinata's younger sister, who showed more promise. He had no idea that his eldest daughter was spending so much time at a boy's house, helping with cleaning, laundry, and meals. Otherwise, Yagyu might have found himself under the scrutiny of a Jonin-level protective father. Life was peaceful and pleasant. One day, at 9 a.m. Team 8 gathered at their usual spot, waiting for Kurane. Kurane arrived right on time, appearing with a body flicker technique. Her next words, however, excited Yagyu and his teammates. "Your performance over the past few months has been excellent. You've received high praise from every client. That's why I've decided to take you all to receive a higher-ranked mission today." Chapter 26, Hinata, are you developing? After more than 2 months, a mission outside the village had finally arrived. For Yagyu, this was fantastic news. Now that his Sharingan had evolved to the 3-tomo state, the only thing separating him from the level of a Jonin was combat experience. To become an elite Jonin, Yagyu needed to undergo a long period of accumulation building up battle experience, expanding his arsenal of jutsu and weapons, and developing numerous trump cards. This was how individuals like Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy became who they were. Kakashi copied over 1,000 jutsu and developed his own S-rank lightning release technique, while Guy created various taijutsu techniques and honed his body, gradually mastering the 8 gates and extending their duration. If Yagyu wanted to skip this period of accumulation, there were only 2 ways. The first was to acquire a powerful trump card that could even pose a threat to cage-level ninjas, essentially learning S-rank jutsu that require both immense talent and rigorous effort to master. The second method was to obtain a vast number of jutsu, talents, and Kekkei Genkai, compensating for quality with quantity. Of course, if Yagyu could somehow evolve his Sharingan to the Manjiki level in a short period of time, he wouldn't need to worry about the accumulation phase. Just by mastering the unique techniques of the Manjiki Sharingan and being able to summon the god-like Susanoo, only the likes of Noki, the strongest among the 5 kage, or Nagato, a gatekeeper of the super kage level, would be worthy opponents. If Obito Uchiha hadn't reclaimed his left eye from Kakashi, he would only be able to provoke Yagyu for about 5 minutes unless he used Izanagi to stretch it to 10. This is because, the moment the Manjaki Sharingan awakens, Ashura's Chakra Yagyu's golden legendary ability will kick in. However, since his Sharingan had just evolved to 3 Tomo, there was no chance of it advancing to the Manjaki level anytime soon. For now, Yagyu's best option was to expand his jutsu repertoire. Yet, even expanding his arsenal was no simple task. He had already acquired the most valuable talent from Kurane the illusion expert and learned several of the Ui family's genjutsu techniques. Even if Yagyu came up with excuses to challenge Kurane in combat and won, there was little left for him to gain from her. As for Hinata's Byakugan, Yagyu had been working hard for the past 2 months to try and obtain it, but he hadn't had any luck so far. And even if he did get the Byakugan, its benefits to him would be minimal since, until it evolves into the Tenseigan, or mutates into the Sharingan or Rinnegan, the Byakugan is just the lowest level sensory eye of the Tsutsuki clan. Regarding the insect techniques of the Aberame clan, Yagyu wouldn't merge with those even if he could acquire them. With little help from those around him, Yagyu had to look outside the village for new targets. He didn't expect his mission to unfold like Team 7's, where they encountered strong enemies. He just hoped to pass through populated areas, run into some rogue ninjas, and maybe even encounter shinobi from other villages. Thanks to his experience developing the spiraling water tornado, Yagyu was well aware of how much the chakra control talent had boosted his growth. If he could acquire other chakra natures and jutsu and master their nature transformations, he felt confident he could advance the Raise Nan or develop new, original jutsu. With this goal in mind, Yagyu followed Kurane as she led Team 8 to the Hokage's office in the Hokage building. A C-rank mission, is it? Sarutobi Hiruzen, wearing his Hokage hat, was sitting there smoking from a pipe, reviewing a report on Team 8's performance over the last 2 months. Nodding in approval, the Hokage spoke, "From what I can see, Team 8's missions have all received high praise from the clients. Your teamwork is currently the best among your peers. It seems that your cooperation and team chemistry have reached a solid level. It's time for you to take on more advanced tasks." Setting aside the report, Hiruzen pulled out a large scroll from beneath his desk. After unrolling it, he quickly found a mission for Team 8. A few days ago, a merchant caravan came to Konoha for business. They are concerned about being robbed on their way back and have requested an escort to bring them safely to the mining village in the land of rivers. With a flick of his finger on the scroll, a puff of white smoke appeared, and a small scroll materialized in Hiruzen's hand. He tossed the scroll to Kurane. "Here is the information on the caravan leader. Kurane, you can negotiate with him." "Understood, Lord Hokage," Kurane responded respectfully before leading Team 8 out of the office. As they exited, Yagyu noticed that Sarutobi Hiruzen was watching him closely. It was clear that the Hokage knew about him and had probably been keeping an eye on him for some time. But since Hiruzen didn't say anything, Yagyu also pretended not to notice, leaving without a word. After exiting the Hokage building, Kurane opened the mission scroll and led Team 8 to an inn where they negotiated with a middle-aged man overseeing the caravan. While this was happening, Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino stood nearby, observing. Soon, another middle-aged man, dressed in luxurious attire, emerged from the inn. Kurane continued to discuss the mission details with him. The man glanced over at Team 8, and his face lit up with excitement as his gaze lingered on Hinata. Hinata, in a soft voice, said, "Yagyu-kun, it looks like that man is staring at me." Before Yagyu could reply, Shino spoke calmly, "Yes, he's looking at you, but he's looking at your eyes." Yagyu chuckled, "It's only natural." "Your eyes, Hinata," are the most famous sensory eyes in the ninja world. With your Byakugan, we'll be able to detect any ambushes within a kilometer around us. Upon hearing this, Hinata finally understood and nodded in realization. Soon after, Kurane finished the negotiations and said to the group, "You all have the day off. Go home and pack your things. We'll meet at the village gate tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. "Yes, Sensei," the three answered in unison before Team 8 dispersed. "Hinata, want to train together?" Yagyu asked. Hinata responded with a nod. As usual, the two headed to the market to buy ingredients, then went back to Yagyu's house, where his shadow clone started preparing dinner while they sparred in the training room. Once again, Yagyu used his Sharingan to cheat during their taijutsu match, subtly manipulating Hinata into losing her balance during attacks so he could catch her in his arms. Noticing that Hinata had grown more immune to such close contact, Yagyu decided to take it up a notch. As he held Hinata close after she fell into his arms, he teased, "Hinata, have you been developing recently? Hey!" At first, Hinata was confused, but when she followed Yagyu's gaze downward, her cute, delicate face turned beet red. Her head seemed to steam like boiling water, and a soft mist appeared around her. In the next moment, Yagyu felt her body go limp in his arms. Hinata had fainted, her Byakugan eyes spiraling into little swirls. Chapter 27, I Like Them Big, and the Space Backpack's ability. Yagyu clearly overdid it, causing all his efforts to gradually build up Hinata's confidence over the past 2 months to collapse in an instant. Hinata had never been exposed to such blunt language before. After she woke up, she immediately reverted to her old shy self, constantly keeping her head down, her cheeks flushed red since the incident. But with her head lowered like that, it only made her well-developed figure thanks to her big appetite and the nutrients she had absorbed stand out even more. It was so prominent that both Ino and Sakura would definitely feel envious if they saw her now. At this rate, with her current growth, Hinata was on track to become the definition of a baby-faced beauty with a striking figure. Looking at the always downcast Hinata, Yagyu grew a little concerned that she might, like some female protagonists in certain manga, start feeling insecure or even self-conscious about her early development. So, on impulse, he tried to comfort her, saying, "It's okay, Hinata. Bigger is better. I like them big." Whoosh! It was as if a train whistle had gone off. Hinata's head seemed to explode with a white mushroom cloud, and then, the next thing Yagyu knew, the young girl had collapsed onto the tatami mat unconscious yet again. Yagyu. The next day, at 7:30 a.m. Team 8 arrived early at the village gate, waiting for Kurane and the merchant caravan to show up. Shino, with the backpack slung over his shoulders, noticed that Yagyu was empty-handed and asked, "Yagyu, aren't you bringing any luggage?" Hinata, who hadn't dared to meet Yagyu's gaze since the day before, also curiously glanced at him. Deep down, she felt a bit regretful thinking, if only I wasn't so timid. I should have stayed and helped Yagyu pack his luggage yesterday. Yagyu smiled as he pulled out a scroll, saying, "I travel light. All my stuff is in this storage scroll." That, of course, was a lie. The scroll was completely empty. Yagyu's belongings were all stored in his space backpack. Aside from being able to loot items, the space backpack was by far the best feature of the game system. It had a 5x5 grid of storage slots. Yagyu had tested it before. Like in a game, the backpack could only store inanimate objects, and their weight and volume couldn't exceed the strength of the user Yagyu, in this case. As long as the objects met those conditions, multiple identical items could be stacked in the same slot, saving space. However, the maximum stack was kept at 99 units per slot. With proper use, Yagyu's space backpack could store a lot of stuff. A storage scroll. Both Shino and Hinata nodded in understanding. Team 8 then fell into silence once again. Yagyu couldn't do anything about it. Shino was introverted and stoic, while Hinata was shy and quiet. Any conversation topic would quickly fizzle out. Not knowing how to keep the mood alive, Yagyu decided to just close his eyes and relax. Before long, it was 8 a.m. Kurane and the merchant caravan soon arrived, not keeping Team 8 waiting for long. "This is Mr. Yamada. You must protect him at all costs during this mission," Kurane introduced the merchant to her students. "Yes, Kurane-sensei," the three of them responded in unison. Mr. Yamada smiled kindly and said, "Thank you for your help. When we return to the mining village, I will make sure to reward you properly." That simple statement immediately put him in Yagyu and the others' good graces. Compared to Tashina, the merchant who Team 7 had encountered in the original story, this client seemed like a much better person. No wonder he was the leader of the caravan. After making their introductions, both Kurane and Mr. Yamada handed their departure papers to the Chunin gatekeepers. For the first time in their lives, Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino were stepping outside the confines of Konoha, the military base they had grown up in. Hinata's face was full of excitement, clearly curious about the outside world. Shino, on the other hand, kept his hands in his pockets, maintaining his usual cool demeanor, though in reality, he was even more excited than Hinata. As for Yagyu, he was genuinely indifferent. Although he had lived in a bustling city before his reincarnation, Yagyu was originally a kid from the countryside. He had a good idea of what the world outside Konoha was like, a world without paved roads, where even nobles traveled by horse-drawn carriage. Besides the fresh air and beautiful natural scenery, there would likely only be muddy dirt roads. Pass by a carriage, and you'd end up covered in dust. If it weren't for the countless D-rank missions that had tempered their patience, this slow, tedious journey would have felt like torture for the three young ninjas. After all, when ninjas traveled at full speed, they could cover incredible distances. Early in Naruto, Shippuden, Team 7 made it from Konoha to Sunagakure in just a day, and that involved crossing the lands of two major nations and several smaller ones. Yagyu, who excelled in history, knew the location of the Land of Rivers. It was sandwiched between the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind. In fact, Akatsuki had sealed Gaara's one-tail Shikaku in a cave located in the Land of Rivers. This country was full of mountains and forests. The small towns and villages were either built at the foot of mountains or perched atop them. These mountain settlements were known as mountain villages. From the name Mining Village, it was easy to deduce that this caravan likely came to Konoha to trade iron ore. Given the region's many mountain ranges, bandit activity was quite common. With this in mind, Yagyu was somewhat disappointed. Most bandits were just poor, desperate people. The chances of encountering rogue ninjas were nearly zero. But Yagyu's disappointment only grew from there. Mr. Yamada, probably carrying a fortune that wasn't entirely his own, was careful not to take any risks. He had purchased enough supplies before leaving Konoha, and the caravan avoided populated areas, taking the quickest route back to the mining village. At night, they camped in the wilderness, and Team 8 took turns standing guard, an incredibly dull task. It took them 3 whole days just to leave the Land of Fire. Upon entering the Land of Rivers, Hinata, who frequently activated her Byakugan, did spot several bandits eyeing the caravan. However, when the scouts reported back about the presence of ninja, these bandits quickly backed off. Some of the smarter bandits decided to follow the caravan from a distance, hoping to strike once Team 8 left. But with Kurane's permission, Shino simply dispatched his insects to deal with the would-be stalkers. On the 5th day after leaving Konoha, having traversed one mountain after another and braved harsh terrain, Team 8 and the caravan finally reached the mining village, perched on a mountainside. Compared to Konoha, the mining village was like night and day. In fact, it was less of a village and more like a massive construction site. Aside from the elderly, women, and children, nearly everyone else was working the mines. Seeing this, Team 8 had no intention of staying to rest for a few days. After politely declining Mr. Yamada's invitation, Kurane collected the mission reward and led Team 8 back down the mountain. However, just as they were preparing to travel swiftly back to Konoha, a group of figures clad in black raincoats appeared ahead of them. Seeing these individuals, Kurane and Hinata's faces subtly changed. Kurane quickly made a hand gesture behind her back, signaling to the three students. Hinata moved closer to Yagyu, whispering, "When we came up the mountain, I checked the surroundings with my Byakugan, but I didn't see these people." Hearing this, Yagyu and Shino instantly tensed up. As they continued moving forward, their hands subtly reached for their weapon pouches, ready for action at a moment's notice. Chapter 28, Reiga Kurosuke, The Weakness of the Byakugan. Konoha Ninja, they remind me of someone I really hate, the leader of the group wearing black raincoats muttered as Team 8 heightened their vigilance. Sensing the shift in the leader's mood, a boy's voice came from the bulging mass on the back of the raincoat, "Should we prepare a funeral for them?" "Hat." The raincoat-clad figure didn't respond directly but instead grinned ominously. Soon, Team 8 and the group of black raincoat-clad individuals passed by each other. During the encounter, both sides kept a sharp eye on one another, like they were ready to attack at the slightest provocation. However, neither side made a move as they passed. Just when Kurane was about to let her guard down, a thick white mist suddenly filled the air, turning the entire area into a dense, foggy blur in an instant. "Not good, it's the hidden mist jutsu." Kurane's face showed immediate concern. "Byakugan activate." Hinata instantly activated her Byakugan and turned to unleash a swirling blast of energy behind them. 8 trigrams, air palm. The twisted air, like an invisible cannonball, struck one of the raincoat-wearing figures, sending them flying. "Ah!" A scream pierced through the mist. But a second later, Hinata's expression drastically changed as she urgently called out, "It's an ambush. There are at least 100 of them." Through her Byakugan's perspective, she saw a large group of people with visible chakra pathways appearing in the mist at an alarming speed. "Don't worry, it's just an illusion," Shino said calmly while observing his insects crawling on his finger. "It's amazing that an illusion can fool the Byakugan, but my insects tell me that the scent of our surroundings hasn't changed." Hearing this, Yagyu, who had also activated his Sharingan and noticed the presence of hundreds of chakra sources in the mist, paused his hand seals for a moment. He then adjusted his technique. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Boom! The dense white mist obscured their view, but the sound of a popping clone could be heard. Raise Nan Water Tornado. Yagyu took a few steps forward, raising his right hand above his head, palm facing upward. Blue spirals of chakra appeared from thin air, forming a small blue tornado. As soon as the blue tornado formed, a massive surge of water descended from the sky. The water was so vast that it could have easily swept Team 8 away, but instead, it converged toward Yagyu's hand as if drawn by a magnetic force. The water spun into an ever-growing water tornado. Before it was fully formed, Yagyu hurled the water tornado forward. As it flew, the base of the spinning vortex carved a deep trench into the ground. Stones and debris were sucked into the rotating mass, turning the water tornado into a far more destructive force. The powerful suction from the tornado pulled the surrounding mist into it, resembling a giant vacuum cleaner. The water tornado, growing larger and packed with more debris, sped toward the group of black raincoat-clad figures. Due to the tornado's speed and the mist clouding their vision, the black-clad figures didn't react in time. They were caught in the suction and dragged into the violent vortex. Screams echoed through the mountains. When the mist finally cleared, a massive water tornado filled with debris and bodies was seen rapidly moving away from Team 8's line of sight. Unless it encountered a thick mountain wall, the tornado would likely continue on its path for quite some distance before dissipating. Seeing the devastating effect it had even on land, both Kurenai and Shino couldn't begin to imagine the destruction Yagyu's technique would unleash if used at sea. Hinata, with veins bulging around her temples, was in disbelief. It was really just an illusion. How is that possible? Like the Sharingan, the Byakugan is known for being a counter to Genjutsu. When activated, Hinata could see a person's chakra pathways. Any ninja with chakra flowing through their bodies would be visible to her. Unless it was a physical clone like the Shadow Clone Jutsu, illusions created by Genjutsu couldn't replicate chakra pathways. Yet, moments ago, Hinata had seen at least 100 individuals with flowing chakra pathways in the mist. That couldn't have been a mere illusion. But somehow, it was. For the first time, Hinata started to doubt the power of her clan's Byakugan. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of thunder echoed through the mountains. In the next second, both Yagyu and Kurenai seemed to sense something dangerous. Their faces changed as they urgently shouted, "Scatter!" Yagyu quickly grabbed the still-dazed Hinata and leaped away in a flash. Boom! A massive bolt of lightning struck the spot where Team 8 had just been standing. The ground exploded on impact, sending debris flying everywhere, while blue-white arcs of electricity crackled and flickered across the scorched earth. Team 8 regrouped a short distance away, forming a triangle formation as they scanned the surrounding mountain path. Kurenai's expression was serious. "Hinata, quickly use your Byakugan and search for the person who used that lightning jutsu." Still cradled in Yagyu's arms, Hinata frantically looked around with her Byakugan activated. "I can't find anyone. Other than the people hit by the water tornado, I don't see any chakra signatures at all." "My insects can't find them either," Shino said grimly. Yagyu, on the other hand, with his 3 Tomo Sharingan glowing under his fake contact lenses, seemed to have spotted something. He gently reassured Hinata in his arms, "Don't worry. It's not that you can't see them, it's that they have a way to counter both the Byakugan and sensory techniques. I've found him, look over there." Yagyu pointed towards a mountain trail. Following Yagyu's direction, Team 8 spotted a figure, the leader with the bulging raincoat. The person had removed their raincoat hood, revealing green hair and a pair of uniquely shaped swords, crackling with blue-white lightning, in both hands. Seeing this person and the infamous weapons, Kurenai's beautiful face turned pale with cold sweat. "That's one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Reiga Kurosuke." Without hesitation, Kurenai pulled out a kunao, her expression resolute. "I'll hold him off. You 3 must leave here immediately." "Sensei, aren't you going to escape with us?" Hinata asked urgently. "I can't run," Kurenai replied in a serious tone. "He's a rogue ninja from the Hidden Mist, a jonin skilled in the silent killing technique. If we flee together, he'll just pick us off one by one." "If that's the case, then let Team 8 take him on together," Yagyu said with a confident smile. "I can test my new jutsu on him." Hinata's face filled with determination as she stepped beside Yagyu. Shino, though silent, also moved to stand on Yagyu's other side. "You all!" Kurenai was taken aback by their resolve, a wave of warmth washing over her. A small smile formed on her lips as she said, "Then let's take down this rogue ninja together, as Team 8. Rumble. Thunder echoed through the mountains once more, the sound reverberating through the landscape. Suddenly, another massive bolt of lightning descended from the sky, heading straight for Team 8. Chapter 29, Kurane defeated in an instant, strangling stakes jutsu and hard whirlpool water blade. Whoosh! Just like before, a split second before the lightning struck, Team 8 had already vanished using body flicker technique. 4 shadows, 1 in the front and 3 behind, dashed toward Reiga Kurosuke along the mountain path in typical ninja fashion. Seeing this, Reiga calmly sheathed his twin swords and started forming hand signs at a leisurely pace. Recognizing the jutsu from the hand signs, Kurane immediately began forming her own. Soon after, her figure became distorted, like a mirage in the desert, and disappeared from the sight of both Yagyu's team and Reiga. So, a genjutsu user, what a pitiful woman! Reiga mocked, tears dramatically streaming down his face. Ah! I can't wait to see you bawling in despair. She's coming from 2 o'clock, Reiga, came the voice of a boy, heard only by Reiga, from within the bulge in his raincoat. Reiga didn't doubt the boy's words for a second. He unsheathed his swords again and crossed them, pointing down toward the rapidly approaching Team 8. Lightning style, Thunderball. The chakra of his lightning release surged, covering the blades in crackling electricity, which quickly focused at the tips of the twin swords, forming an electric sphere. Just as Team 8 anticipated a long-range attack aimed at them, Reiga's grin widened. Suddenly, he shifted the direction of his sword tips and fired the thunderball toward a different target. Crackle! The ball of electricity hit something in mid-air, causing a burst of lightning that scattered in every direction. Ah! A scream echoed through the air, and the lightning revealed the twitching form of Kurane. Kurane had not expected to be discovered so easily, nor had she predicted that Reiga's seemingly aimed attack at Yagyu's team was merely bait. Hit directly by the thunderball, Kurane's body convulsed from the electric shock before plummeting from the mountainside. It appeared she had been rendered unconscious. "Sensei!" Hinata cried out in shock. Yagyu frowned, not because Kurane had been taken down but because his 3-tomo Sharingan had detected red particles in the air once again. He was sure now those red particles were the cause of the illusion they'd seen earlier. They also seemed to be the reason Hinata's Byakugan had been countered. However, Yagyu couldn't recall exactly what this bloodline ability was. It wasn't something prominent in the main storyline, though it felt vaguely familiar. But now wasn't the time for deep reflection. Seeing Kurane fall victim to Reiga's trickery, Yagyu, acting as the team leader, quickly gave orders. "Hinata, go heal Sensei." Without waiting for a reply, Yagyu grabbed Hinata by the arm, spun her around, and launched her toward Kurane. Hinata caught the charred and smoking body of Kurane mid-air, landing on the side of the mountain with her chakra-enhanced feet. "Shino, protect Hinata, and Sensei, act accordingly depending on the situation," Yagyu instructed before forming a quick set of hand seals. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Poof! A cloud of white smoke appeared, revealing 5 clones around Yagyu. Without hesitation, Yagyu and his clones scattered, dashing along the mountainside toward Reiga. "Reiga, be careful! This one is strong," the boy's voice from within Reiga's raincoat warned. "His chakra far exceeds yours. He's the one who created that water tornado." Hearing this, Reiga's playful demeanor vanished. He immediately stowed away his twin swords and formed hand signs with newfound urgency. Earth release, rock avalanche. Rumble. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and suddenly, rocks and debris from the mountainside began crashing down, heading straight for Yagyu and his clones. But to Rega's shock, Yagyu responded with the same hand seals. Earth release, rock avalanche. The ground above Rega trembled in response, sending boulders crashing down toward him from above. What? Who is this guy? Rega muttered in disbelief. Without hesitation, he used body flicker to leap off the mountain path, aiming to land on solid ground below. Yagyu and his clones followed suit, leaping into the air. 4 of his clones began combining their jutsu in mid-air. 2 of the clones formed hand signs and unleashed torrents of water, water style, great waterfall technique. The other 2 clones quickly formed spiraling blue tornadoes with their hands, combining them with the torrents of water to form massive water twisters. Water style, spiraling water tornado. The twin water twisters sped toward Rega, who was airborne with no way to dodge. Sensing the danger, Rega unsheathed his swords and poured a massive amount of lightning release chakra into them. Lightning blade technique, falling thunder. He swung his swords, sending 2 giant slashes of lightning racing toward the spiraling water twisters. The water twisters, still forming, burst like overfilled balloons upon contact with the lightning, drenching Yagyu and his clones in a downpour. Rega landed on a boulder, but just as his feet touched the ground, the boy's panicked voice rang out again. Rega, dodge now! Rega looked up in alarm to see Yagyu, still in the air, in the midst of throwing a javelin-like spear made entirely of water. Nearby, a clone maintained a hand seal, having just conjured the water. Yagyu's sharp gaze locked onto Rega, his Sharingan glowing under his contact lenses. In the instant their eyes met, Rega's vision shifted dramatically. The world around him changed, as if he had been transported to another dimension, a crimson space, where Rega found himself completely immobilized. Large black stakes pierced his body, pinning him down. He couldn't move a muscle, save for his eyes. As he looked upward, Rega's pupils shrank in terror. In the blood-red sky above, 2 massive, moon-like eyeballs loomed. The red irises were adorned with 3 rotating black Tomo sh Sharingan. Rega instinctively wanted to say the name of the infamous eyes, but his mouth wouldn't move. Crack! Suddenly, the red dimension around him began to shatter, like a broken mirror falling to pieces. Back in reality, Rega barely regained control of his body when he felt an intense pain shoot through him. His chest was impaled by a blue water javelin. Not only him, whatever was inside the bulge in his raincoat had been skewered as well. Boom! The water javelin exploded like a bomb, transforming into a massive water tornado. These 2 techniques were none other than demonic illusion, shackling stakes jutsu, and water style, hard whirlpool water blade. Chapter 30, Bloodline Limit, Red Eye. The demonic illusion, shackling stakes technique and water style, hard whirlpool water blade marked Yagyu's biggest breakthroughs in recent times. The demonic illusion, shackling stakes technique, also known as the paralyzing jutsu, could be considered the Sharingan's version of the body bind technique. Though both are paralyzing techniques, the 3 Tomo Sharingan only requires eye contact to pull the opponent into the illusionary world of the Sharingan. In this world, the yin release chakra manifests as large black stakes, robbing the opponent of control over their body. This genjutsu became famous in the original story because one cage-level warrior used it to great effect twice. That warrior was none other than one of the legendary Sunin, Orochimaru. Recently, Yagyu had learned the body bind technique from Kurane and combined it with the powers of his 3 Tomo Sharingan to develop his demonic illusion, shackling stakes technique. As for water style, hard whirlpool water blade, it wasn't exactly the original version but rather a combination jutsu Yagyu performed with his shadow clones. Instead of calling it Hard Whirlpool Water Blade, it would be more accurate to call it Combination Technique, Hard Whirlpool Water Blade. The real Hard Whirlpool Water Blade involves creating a whirlpool of water in the user's hand, compressing the water-style chakra's nature and shape transformations into a powerful water spear. This spear possesses incredible piercing power, and upon impact, it explodes into a massive water tornado. To Yagyu, the Hard Whirlpool Water Blade was essentially a water-style equivalent of the Rasen Shuriken. The principles were nearly identical, involving injecting nature transformation into a shape transformation. The Raise Nan is an advanced shape manipulation technique, with an A-rank difficulty in training. If one can successfully inject nature transformation into this advanced shape manipulation without the technique collapsing, it becomes an S-rank ultimate move like the Rasen Shuriken. Yagyu didn't possess wind-style chakra nor new wind-style techniques. Even in the original story, Naruto's wind-style, Rasen Shuriken was initially an incomplete version that couldn't be thrown. Thus, Yagyu had no immediate plans to develop the wind-style, Rasen Shuriken, at least not yet. Instead, Yagyu had attempted to inject water-style nature transformation into the Raise Nan multiple times. Unfortunately, his mastery of water-style nature transformation wasn't sufficient, and he failed repeatedly. One day, while practicing the spiraling water tornado with his shadow clones, Yagyu tried to increase the speed and formation of the water tornado. A sudden flash of inspiration struck him. He remembered Tobirama Senju's Hard Whirlpool Water Blade. Creating a whirlpool in his hand and then shaping it into a water spear seemed like a reversed version of the Rasen Shuriken. Yagyu began experimenting tirelessly. After numerous failures, he decided to use shadow clones to assist him, just like how Naruto first performed the Raise Nan. He began by creating a chakra vortex in his hand, then added water to form a whirlpool, wrapping a high-level shape transformation around a lower-level nature transformation. Eventually, Yagyu succeeded in forming a water spear, his own version of the Hard Whirlpool Water Blade. All of this was thanks to the chakra control ability he obtained from Sakura. Without this innate talent, even with inspiration, Yagyu would not have been able to achieve this so quickly. Before Super Cage level opponents appear, ninja battles are essentially battles of information. Kurane was defeated by Reiga Kurosuke because she had been deceived by his previous intel. Likewise, Reiga was taken down by Yagyu because he knew nothing about Yagyu's abilities. After all, who could have predicted that not only would Yagyu possess such powerful water-style techniques, but he also had the Uchiha clan's 3-tomo Sharingan with genjutsu powers beyond expectations. Since Reiga was protecting the person behind him, he couldn't engage teammate in close combat. Yagyu exploiting this to defeat him was entirely reasonable. After landing back on the ground, Yagyu was about to check on Kurane's condition when something astonishing happened before his eyes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several beams of light shot out from the dissipating water tornado, forming differently colored orbs that floated just 10 centimeters above the ground. There were white, blue, and red orbs. Holy crap! Yagyu exclaimed, his mouth slightly open in surprise as he let out a curse. What was happening as the orbs automatically flew toward Yagyu? He quickly counted them. There were 7 in total, 1 red, 1 blue, and 5 white. It was the first time Yagyu had seen multiple orbs drop from a single target all at once. Did he just save the world? He was getting incredibly lucky. Suddenly, a thought struck Yagyu like a flash of insight. Could this be the true nature of loot drops from enemies? Was it possible that defeating enemies yielded the best rewards? Because the enemy could no longer challenge him, the rating for the victory was maxed out, leading to an exceptionally high drop rate. At that moment, Yagyu felt like he had uncovered the truth. However, with no way to verify it, he pushed aside his curiosity for the time being. He began walking toward Hinata while calling up his virtual interface to check the orb details in his inventory. The first one was the red orb. As the information for the red orb appeared, Yagyu suddenly remembered what those red particles were earlier. Inventory, bloodline limit, red eye red. This was a bloodline limit from one of the filler arcs in the anime. Yagyu couldn't recall the owner's name, but he remembered the ability. The owner of this bloodline limit had likely been the person hiding behind Reiga Kurosuke, which also explained why Reiga was hesitant to engage in close combat with Team 8. The Red Eye's abilities were somewhat similar to the Byakugan but served as a direct counter to it. In addition to granting perception abilities like the Byakugan, the Red Eye could create illusions that interfered with the Byakugan's sensory abilities and judgments. The humanoid illusions Hinata saw and her inability to detect Reiga's location were the results of the Red Eye's interference. Yagyu couldn't help but think, if the Red Eye exists, does that mean the Dragon Eye from the filler arcs is real too? This was good news for Yagyu. There were plenty of powerful abilities in the filler arcs, and if Yagyu could obtain them, his arsenal would increase dramatically. After all, who wouldn't want more trump cards? Yagyu didn't immediately fuse with the Red Eye and instead moved on to the blue orb's information. Seeing the blue orb's contents brought a smile to his face. Inventory, Lightning Release Blue. The blue orb contained lightning chakra nature. Once fused, Yagyu would possess 5 chakra natures. He would be just too short of becoming one of the rare ninja with all elemental releases. Without any hesitation, Yagyu fused with it. As the blue light entered his body, Yagyu turned his attention to the remaining 5 white orbs. All 5 orbs contained jutsu, all of which were techniques Reiga Kurosuke had used. They were Water Style, Hidden Mist Jutsu, Ninja Art, Rock Avalanche, Lightning Style, Thunderball, Lightning Style, Reiga, and Ninja Art, Lightning Armor. These lightning release techniques were cast using Reiga's twin blades, Kaiba. Looking at these jutsu, Yagyu frowned slightly. This wasn't Reiga's full set of techniques. Although Yagyu didn't know the exact number of techniques Reiga possessed, the white orbs didn't include the lightning slash that destroyed Yagyu's water tornado. This meant that defeating enemies wouldn't drop all their abilities, only half or a majority of them. For Yagyu, this was not good news. He had hoped defeating an enemy would yield all of their skills, but now, it seemed more like the system was reminding him not to kill his opponents before obtaining the most valuable skills. With this realization, Yagyu pushed aside the dark thoughts that had briefly crossed his mind. He had been thinking of killing Sasuke Uchiha in the future. Thanks for watching.